Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Jared out once again today. Jake and TD back in from 2 to 6. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport with you talking Titans, football, all the things for the next 4 hours. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Ian Safar is also here. Ian, how are you on this Friday?
What up? How are you guys?
Doing well. Doing well. Should be another fun show today. We've got Chad Withrow going to join us a little bit earlier today, 2:45, and then Corey Curtis will be on his usual spot at 3:15. We're going to talk Titans most of the day today as they prepare for their game against the Bengals on Sunday. TD, how are you? How was your Thursday night?
Thursday night was good. Got me some miles in on the Peloton, man.
Love it.
Yeah, I got a good 9.5.
Oh,
there.
wow.
Yeah, got 9.5 this morning, man. These legs are burning, on fire, ready to go.
My fiance's got one of those, and she keeps telling me to try one or try it. I need to get on there.
It's good. How about you? How was your Thursday and your early? Hey, they're already in the chat talking about Fire Ran Brinker and woo, fellas.
There's no stopping them
up, man. Hey.
When Jared comes back, he can get them started with that at 2:00. We're gonna ease into it here. It was good. I one of my friends got engaged last night, so went and celebrated that. And watched 49ers Rams, which was maybe one of the most boring Thursday night games of all time last night. No touchdowns, 12-6 final. The Rams win. I mean, the Rams put themselves back in that NFC West conversation, but Thursday night football definitely was not all fireworks last night.
Man, Deebo Samuel, he dropped that ball. He might, and Ian, we talked about, I told you I had Deebo on my right. And what did I say, Ian? I told you he's been disappointed lately. He sure enough did it again.
I thought at one point the Titans would no longer hold the lowest scoring game of the season in the NFL. It's 9-6.
If it had been
one more first down, I was like, oh, okay. Our bright spot.
He catches that, he might have scored, and it's a different ball game. But it hit him in a bad spot, right in the hands.
Right in the hands, huh?
It's just so weird looking at those two rosters, and you've got the offensive guru coaches, and it's Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Deebo Samuel, Kyron Williams, all these superstars, and no one could score a touchdown last night. I know the defenses are solid as well, but
the Brock Purdy shine wearing off at all this year?
It might be.
I think so.
Is he
horrible timing?
Is he going to be worth that contract? Is the question.
I mean, you gotta pay him. Daniel Jones got a couple dollars, so if Daniel Jones could get it, Brock Purdy could get it. And although I believe he is very much of a system quarterback, and there's nothing wrong with being a system quarterback because I think he executes that system supremely.
Perfect.
So you got to have him in there.
Yeah, I think that's the perfect way to say it is, yes, he is a system quarterback, but because Kyle Shanahan's system is so good, and, we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo get to a Super Bowl in that system, like Brock Purdy can do it. He's going to get paid, but yeah, not great timing to see him starting to, regress back to the mean here. Last night, also, I mentioned Cooper Kupp. I saw that he had the most miles run in a game with no catches, no yards, no touchdowns. He ran almost 5 miles on the field last night without recording a stat.
He might as well go ahead and get himself a Peloton too, man.
Yeah, it reminds he almost got to half of what you got on the bike.
It reminds me of T.O. back in the day. I remember in San Francisco, Greg Knapp was the OC, and he cursed him out, man. He went up to him on the sideline, and you got me running all these routes for nothing. That's all he kept saying, and all he wanted was the football, man. And if I'm Cooper Kupp, I would be lobbying for the ball a lot more, because it's just like 3 years ago, this guy was a Triple Crown winner in the receiver side of things, and now he's a complete afterthought, and it's just nuts to me.
It was a complete cardio game for Cooper Kupp last night, but the Rams did get the win, 12-6 over the 49ers. One of the big storylines coming out of this, though, is Devondre Campbell, the linebacker for the 49ers. Dre Greenlaw returned to the lineup last night after he tore his Achilles in the Super Bowl last year. Devondre Campbell is asked in the third quarter to come in and take his spot and says, nope, I'm not playing anymore.
Yeah.
And I believe that the Niners are working on how he is going to be released at this point.
Yeah, because Kyle Shanahan said he's probably not going to play again, this year. And it's funny, Kiana Martin, she works actually MLB.com and CBS, and she used to be a 49ers, like their reporter and their sideline person, not sideline, but just like their on-field person. And she posted on social media. She was like, it was a text message between her and work. And they said, "Are you coming to work today?" And she texted them a picture of Tavondre Campbell. They were like, "What does that mean?" She was like, "I'm not coming in."
I saw another one where it was, did you clean the dishes in the sink? And the guy responded with a picture of Deebo Samuel. And they're like, what does that mean? They're washed.
Yeah. Oh, that's cold. That's cold.
Devondre Campbell, I mean, we haven't seen anything like that since Vontae Davis with the Bills a few years ago when he not only didn't play in the second half, he retired at halftime. He ended his football career at halftime of was it Bills Jets maybe?
Folks, do me a huge favor. Look up Tre'Davious White imitates Vontae Davis. You will be dying when you see that, man. I'm gonna show it to you on the break. It is hilarious, man. The voice, I'm gonna just leave it alone. The voice, I think it was Tre'Davious White and Shady McCoy. They were doing like a little IG live or something together. It's hilarious, man.
I mean, Vontae Davis, that is still one of the craziest things that has ever happened. I mean, Antonio Brown taking off his shirt with the Bucs too and running off the field. That one was kind of crazy as well.
Yeah.
But there's other stuff going on with Antonio Brown as we've come to learn. But yeah, Devondre Campbell, I find it hard to believe that maybe that wasn't the last time he plays NFL football, because the 49ers certainly aren't going to want him back. And I don't know if another team is going to want to take a chance on a guy who quit on his team mid-game.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean, is at a point, I remember him coming out like Tavondre, he was man. It's like, wow, if God built an outside linebacker,
right,
this is what he would build. The talent doesn't outweigh the possible anymore in this situation. So I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't touch
I mean,
him.
it's a guy who's told you that he's going to do what's best for him and not what's best for the team, even in the middle of a game, which, again, it's very rare. I think we just named off 3 of the times that it's happened in at least the last 20 years is Antonio Brown, Devondre Campbell, and Vontae Davis. And Vontae Davis at least didn't just walk off the field. He just at halftime was like, you know what? I've had enough football for my life.
I'm telling you, you got to see. You're going to crack up.
We're going to have to watch that at the break. Fun show coming up the rest of the way. We're going to talk some Titans coming up next, talking about the Titans and the Bengals and some of those ties between Brian Callahan and that Bengals staff and how maybe he is trying to pull from his experience in Cincinnati with the early struggles and try and use that here with the Titans to get this thing turned around. Again, Chad Withrow is going to join us here at the end of the first hour at 2:45. Corey Curtis making his usual spot on a Friday at 3:15. And we're also going to look at what is going to be a great weekend in the NFL, TD. I don't know if you looked at the schedule. Bills-Lions is the one that stands out, but Eagles-Steelers too. Battle of the Keystone State with 2 teams with 10 or more wins. We got a couple of possible Super Bowl previews coming up this weekend.
I'm looking for it. I want to see, man, what are they going to do? Are they going to give AJ 6.5 targets in the first couple drives, or how are they going to, manage? It's going to be there. You're right. There's some really good games.
It's Kellen Moore is going to have a decision to make. Do you give in to AJ Brown and just feed him the ball on Sunday, or do you just not look his way and see if you can feed Saquon Barkley as he tries to make his way to the NFL rushing record. So it should be a fun show the rest of the way. We'll step aside here. When we come back, we're going to get into Brian Callahan and how he can get this ship turned around and maybe use some of his experience in Cincinnati, where the Bengals started 6-25-1 over their first 2 seasons in Cincinnati, and what he can do with the Titans here. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Patience that the Bengals have, with you and Zach Taylor in the beginning. Like, how much do you look at that as an example of, okay, we kept our eyes on the prize, kept pressing forward, and applying that to now?
Yeah, I mean, situations are all different. But there is some similarities and some parallels anytime you're starting a program in your first year. And I draw on a lot of those experiences. It's hard to say that they're going to mirror each other in any way, shape, or form. But there is a lot of lessons I learned in that first year in particular that I still use daily here. And I don't want to draw too many comparisons because we're just sort of starting out, and that program's 6 years along at this point. So, but there's a lot of lessons I learned, a lot of things I draw upon from that early part of that.
Brian Callahan earlier this week answering TD's question about what he's been able to draw from the early struggles in Cincinnati. Again, when Zach Taylor showed up with Brian Callahan as his offensive coordinator, they went 6-25-1 over their first 2 years. Yeah. They held on. The next year they were in the Super Bowl. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5-106.3 The Game. We'd love to hear from you as well. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. You can text or call. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. TD, I think that is a perfect example of patience. And right now, Zach Taylor, he might be on the hot seat a little bit as well with the way the last couple of years has gone. But there has to be some patience in the NFL that you're not going to get instant microwave success. That, a team that won 6 games over 2 years, they didn't fire the coach. They were able to make a run to the Super Bowl in 2021. Titans fans not happy about that, obviously. And then 2022 went back to the AFC Championship game, showing that the success can come even if the early returns aren't great.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It takes in some instances, it takes a build-up process, right? And you see a lot of these things where, like the Texans, they turn things around really quickly, and it's a unique situation. I think you also, if you look at the 49ers, they had a very bad, I think it was 2-14 season, 3-13, something like that. They had a really bad season before the roster build-up happened. And I just think, like in the chat, Rick Spillman is a guy that's continuously brought up. And I mean, he's done a solid job there, but what did they win? Okay, it culminated with an NFC Championship game appearance. And the Eagles, they stomped them. You know what I mean? I was at that game
with
live.
Nick Foles.
With Nick Foles. And Nick Foles, look, he balled out. I'm just saying this whole rush to fire Callahan, the rush to fire Rand. Look, next year, in my opinion, is do or die for Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, and the crew. It's do or die. But this year, it hasn't been good enough, period. But I don't think it hasn't been good enough to the point where you fire. The roster needs a lot of help. You got to continue to build it. But one thing, because you always see the comparison to the Commanders, well, Jaden Daniels, he hides a lot of things. You know what I mean? So that's a thing you have to think about.
Yeah, getting a dynamic young quarterback who comes in and has as much success as Jaden Daniels has in his first year. And Jaden Daniels, it also has to be noted that he played 4 or 5 years of college football. 4. Mm-hmm. Because he was the starter at Arizona State for a couple years, then 2 years at LSU. So he's played a lot of football. He's going to step in and be a little bit easier to make the transition from college football to the NFL. Yeah. And again, having the quarterback, it hides a lot of the issues with the Commanders. I don't think you can look at the Commanders roster and say it's perfect right now. There's plenty of holes over there too. Yeah. But having the quarterback, and you have an experienced head coach as well, and Dan Quinn, who's also gone to a Super Bowl. There's a lot of stuff that they already know that right now Brian Callahan and these first-time coordinators are just figuring out for the first time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's a lot of trial and error here that they have to work their way through. And that's the big, again, this patience thing, you have to have it.
Yep.
I mean, you don't – a lot of times the things that are built instantly, they crumble down quickly. So you got to understand that, again, like not everything just – if you want long, sustainable success, a foundation has to be built, and you keep loading upon that foundation. These folks aren't even giving Callahan a chance to pour the concrete. I mean, for heaven's sake, I understand that Jaguars, that's a darn disgrace.
Yeah, you got to see results at some point.
You got to see results, but you have to understand that there's always things behind the results happening. And it's too early to talk about firing Callahan.
And you mentioned Rick Spielman, and I know Jared likes to talk about this a lot, that, you know, if he was Amy Adams Strunk, he would fire Rand Carthon and replace him with an experienced general manager, a guy who's already done it and had success. And maybe for better or for worse, it could be a good decision by these teams or a bad decision by these teams. We don't see a whole lot of retreads on NFL general managers. Usually guys get one chance to be an NFL general manager. I'm trying to think of anybody who's gone somewhere, gotten fired, and gotten another chance. I'm sure there's a couple out there, but it's very rare.
But yeah, it's not frequent.
You know, NFL head coaches, it happens all the time. Not as much as maybe the NBA and NHL, where it feels like they just trade head coaches back and forth every couple of years, where, you know, Doc Rivers has now coached half the league in the NBA, and Mike Budenholzer just got another job after getting fired from the Bucks. It's like there are other leagues that do it more, but in the NFL, it's strange that these head coaches, like a Dan Quinn, they get other jobs after they get fired, but that doesn't seem to happen at the personnel level. It seems like you get a couple years at it, and if you don't have success, you're not going to get another look.
And that's the thing. Give it time. You know what I mean? And you're right. These guys, they pretty much look, John Robinson, I think he did a solid job here. He's just starting to creep in a couple years later into the mentions of GM jobs. Right. I think John Robinson, and you look, the foundation that he came from, you know, Tampa and New England, like, it's very solid. I personally, if I was running a team, I would definitely consider him for a GM job. But to your point about retread, like, you don't see it too often.
It does seem like, because there's always a reason that a general manager gets fired, whether it's bad free agent signings, bad drafts. And I have trouble believing that John Robinson is going to get a job, even though I do think that he probably deserves another shot at it. I think people are going to point at his last three drafts and say, why would we want to hire this guy who found one impact player in 3 years of drafts?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's the right thing, because I think John Robinson, you look at 2016 through 2019, some of the moves he made turned this thing around fast. They went from 2-14, 3-13, 9-7, and didn't have a losing record until the year he got fired.
Yeah.
And it took a 7-game losing streak to do it.
And you talk about, like, building it, and a lot of looking at Kevin Byard, 3rd round, Derrick Henry 2nd, AJ 50 were 1st overall. You look at Jayon Brown 5th round. Like, he's done it. David Long, like that 2019 draft. If I'm John Robinson, I'm like, yo.
Pretty much every single player on that draft ended up being an impact player for this team outside of DeAndre Walker.
Yeah.
You could even look at some of the smaller trades he made, like, not a small trade, but DeMarco Murray was one of the first moves that he made. And a lot of people were ready to give up on DeMarco Murray after the Eagles.
Yeah. Well, season
was rough. It was rough, but he took a chance on him, made a buy low move. And DeMarco Murray ended up being huge for this team, taking a step from being in the bottom of the NFL to being a playoff contender. Trading Dorial Green Beckham for Dennis Kelly.
I was in Philly when that happened.
Right.
I remember we all were like, what? We thought it was a great move for the Eagles.
Yeah. I remember I loved Dorial Green Beckham. I was like, oh, this guy, he's a 1st-round talent, but he fell because of the off-the-field stuff. Well, it turns out it was rightfully so, but he was able to make that move and get Dennis Kelly, who was he ever up to the level of a Lewan or a Conklin? No, but he was a great swing tackle for years. Ryan Tannehill trade. That's another one.
That was a outstanding one.
You got a quarterback for 4 or 5 years who took you to the AFC Championship game and a number 1 seed for a 4th-round pick. But I still think that John Robinson is going to get judged by those last 3 drafts, where Roger McCreary is pretty much the only success story from those 3 years. And, you also traded away one of the best wide receivers in football as a part of that as well. But I do think that even if the Titans were to make a move at general manager and relieve Rand Carthon of his duties, I don't think they'd go to a retread. I think they'd be looking for the new up-and-coming guy, assistant GM somewhere else, because that seems to be the way it's going with hiring general managers. Is you don't go for the guys who've already done it. You go for the guys with the new ideas and the fresh perspective.
And the whole thing, these fire Rand people continue to overlook is if they fire Rand and they hire another GM, they're going to be paying 3 GMs to do one GM's job.
It's part of football, though. That's
not part of football.
Look at the
that's
look
not
at colleges.
smart football.
It's not smart, but look at Texas A&M.
But it's just furthermore reason why you don't fire him. It's just you give it a moment. Allow it the foundation to be built.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying that these college programs and these franchises don't seem to be worried about the buyouts and having to pay out the rest of contracts. Some of these buyouts are ridiculous, but they don't care because, you'll make it up if you do find the right guy next, and you don't want to wait around and lose a chance to maybe get the right guy who could get another job. So there's a lot that has to be sorted out with this. And I know that, we look at the YouTube chat and on the text line, it's fire Rand, fire everybody. But, the Titans, they've had a lot of turmoil in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And if they did fire Rand Carthon, I think I would understand why it happened. But I also, I don't know if I feel like stability is also a big thing that the Titans are looking for right now. And having a third straight year with a leadership turnover probably isn't the right way to do that.
No, not at all.
Well, speaking of leadership turnover, the Titans play the Bengals this week. And Zach Taylor possibly could be coaching for his job. We just talked about how he was able to come out of the basement after starting 6-25, then went to the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship in back-to-back years. Now it's been a couple of lean years up there in Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
Does he need to get things going here, starting with this weekend in Tennessee?
Look, he needs to get things going. I don't think if they make any type of change, I would say make a change defensively. But I don't think that you fire Zach Taylor or I can never pronounce his name. The DC now, Lou
Anarumo.
Anarumo. I don't think you fire either of them. You got to get the personnel too.
Right.
So they're both established coaches. They've shown that they can win in this league. So I don't think you fire either of them. You do have to get it going though, because the playoffs are something that it's kind of dwindling. As far as the opportunities to make the wild card, you're not going to win a division, but you still have a chance to make the wild card. And that team, if they get in the wild card, you never know what could happen with Burrow and Chase.
Could be dangerous. We'll talk about it more coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Join Joe Dubin, Chris Sanders, and Derek Mason downtown at JBJ's Nashville this Sunday for the pregame show from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. They'll break down the Titans' Week 15 matchup against the Bengals and give you the latest updates before the game. The pregame show is presented by Parman Tractor and Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Jake Lyman with you in for Jared Stillman today. Teron Davenport had to step out quickly. He will be back shortly. Ian Safar is here as well. We're talking about Titans and Bengals coming up on Sunday and some of the things that the Titans can pull from what the Bengals did to dig out of their early struggles under Zach Taylor in order to get back towards playoff contention next year. And we talked about how Callahan, he was a part of that 6-25 start under Zach Taylor back in 2019 and 2020. And the biggest thing that changed for the Bengals between that 2020 and 2021 season is they got some star players. They got Jamar Chase in the top 5 of the NFL draft. That was Trey Hendrickson's first season in 2021 as well. Those are probably your best offensive and best defensive players. And also Joe Burrow was healthy for the first time in his career. He tore his ACL about midway through that first year in 2020. It was after he had played the Titans, of course, because the Titans did lose that game. That was a rough one, 31-20 or something in Cincinnati back in 2020. But in 2021, they got Joe Burrow back healthy. He played the full year despite what was an awful offensive line. They brought in Trey Hendrickson in free agency from New Orleans. They had Jamar Chase. They had T. Higgins. They finally got the players right. And I think that's what the Titans need to do. If Brian Callahan's a good coach, there's really not much you can do if the players aren't very good. And that's Rand Carthon's job. So we talked about this yesterday a little bit about, do we think that the players that Rand has brought in are going to develop next year along with the players that he brings in with those high assets, the top 40 picks and the $70 million in cap space to build a playoff contender next year? Because that's what it has to be. This team, at least at this point next year, in early to mid-December, you've at least got to be on those graphics that get put up during NFL games where it's like division leaders, wild card, and in the hunt. You've got to be in there somewhere because the Titans have not been the last 2 years.
No.
They are about 3 games removed from that right now. I think the last teams on there, like the Dolphins and Colts.
Yeah, they're kind of straggling behind. It is weird how in the AFC there's such a top discrepancy between the top and the bottom of the conference this year.
Yeah, right now it feels like there's 7 playoff teams. There's 2 that are kind of hanging on for dear life at 6 and 7, and then everybody else has 4 or less wins. Or
it's wild, yeah.
3
wins
crazy.
For Tennessee, 3 wins for Jacksonville, 2 for the Raiders, 3 for the Jets, 3 for the Patriots, 3 for Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati, I guess, would be the one team that's kind of not in the hunt, but also not completely out of it at this point.
5-8.
They'd have to win out if they want to have any shot to make the playoffs.
They'll be 9-8 if they were to win out. Yeah,
because
I'm not exactly sure the rest of their schedule. Probably not very easy. They they have at Tennessee, of course, this week, and then they're home against Cleveland, home against Denver, at Pittsburgh. So,
not impossible.
Not impossible. At Pittsburgh won't be easy. And Denver will be, playoff kind of wild card game.
I don't know if I would have expected that with Bo Nix as their starting quarterback. But Bo Nix, honestly, you look at the quarterbacks this year in their rookie season, there's an argument to be made that Bo Nix has been the best one out of the 4 that have played. Not to get off on a tangent.
I think I saw that Washington and Denver play this week. Is it this week?
No, Washington plays New Orleans this week.
That's right. I don't know why I thought that, but I don't know. I guess it's between Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix.
Yeah, and then Caleb Williams would be 3rd
for Rookie of the Year.
Brock Bowers could be in that Rookie of the Year conversation too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's already broken Sam Laporta's receptions record by a rookie from last year.
Yeah, I wonder what the odds are on all that for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, Bowers, I think, probably has an uphill battle because quarterbacks get the nod generally as long as they have a decent year. But
yeah.
But not to get on too much of a tangent. I did see yesterday somebody put out a redraft of the top 10 in last year's draft, and it somehow had the Titans taking Michael Penix Jr. at 7. Again, not to go too deep on that, but I was laughing at that. Like, how does the dude who hasn't played a single snap move up a spot? in this redraft.
I guess that just tells you what they think about Levis.
I guess it
situation.
was you got to reach for whatever quarterback is there. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to chime in. Just talking about what the Titans can do. Adam in Portland says, why are we idolizing the Bengals? They are trash. They've got Burrow, Chase, and a bunch of trash. We don't have Burrow and Chase, so let's pick someone else. The Bengals aren't horrible. They've been I'd love to see their record in one-score games. I feel like they've kind of had the opposite of the Chiefs effect going on for them over these last 2 years, where when you watch the Bengals play, the eye test tells you that they're a good football team, at least offensively. They're an explosive football team. They make plays. They are a fun team to watch. I know that doesn't always translate to wins, but it is strange to see like the Chiefs have so many wins this year where
they have lost some close games. You know, they lost to the Patriots the first week of the season, which is odd, 16-10. Then they lose the second game to the Chiefs by a point. Then they lose the third week to Washington by 5. So, yeah. And then they lost in overtime to the Ravens.
Yeah.
And by a field goal.
And these are all playoff teams that they're playing tight with. I mean, that Chiefs game in week 2, that was the pass interference call that they made that was very controversial. One of the many breaks that the Chiefs have gotten this year in late game scenarios. And you look at some of these games they're losing, like they put up 33 in a loss to the Commanders, 38 in a loss to the Ravens. The Steelers game, where was that? 34 in a loss to the Ravens too. They lost 35-34 on the road.
Yep.
And then 38 to the Steelers. I get it. You got to have a good defense too, but it is funny how the Chiefs, I think, have won 15 one-score games in a row or whatever it is, and the Bengals just can't seem to get any of that luck to go their way. They need to get that Steelers and Chiefs magic that somehow allows them to just win those tight games no matter what. And maybe that's an indictment on Zach Taylor that he can't get these teams to win these close games. I'm not saying we have to idolize the Bengals, but the Bengals built up their roster from a team that was one of the worst in football post Andy Dalton, AJ Green era. Once they moved on from that group, they were pretty bad for 3 or 4 years, even into the Zach Taylor eras we've talked about. And they were able to turn around and go to the Super Bowl in 1 year. What we're looking at is the Titans have to turn this around quick because this front office and this coaching staff isn't going to get 5 years to figure this out. They're going to get at most one more, I think, to try and get this team back into at least a competitive state. So you've got to find these stars. Maybe it's a wide receiver early in the draft, like Tet McMillan, like Luther Burden, like we talked about. I think they do need to get an impact pass rusher. We mentioned Trey Hendrickson, maybe not the flashiest name when he was with the Saints. He's not up there with the Khalil Macks and the Joey Bosas and Myles Garrett, but he's leading the NFL in sacks right now. And he's been one of the best pass rushers in football over the last 4 years since he signed with the Bengals. You need to go find a guy like that who can sack the quarterback, because as much as you like Harold Landry and Jeffrey Simmons, they just haven't hit the quarterback enough.
Yeah, since
over
he
the last few years
did get lucky with the Burrow situation,
right,
getting that quarterback, and it's going to be tough for the Titans. Back to this quarterback conundrum situation here.
Yes, and we've got
a lot of offseason to talk about it.
We've spent plenty of time on the quarterback.
And there's going to be some situations that open up, I'm sure. But
I think the Bengals just are a good example of a team that was bad. They were at the bottom of the league and found a way to turn it around quick, even though it wasn't quick for the staff that was in there. It's not like they made one change and it fixed everything. They found a way to figure it out after struggling early. That's what the Titans are going to need to do over the next couple of years. TD rejoining us.
Yeah. Hey, I'm for the people, man. People of Nashville and Cincinnati. I just had to go through. I had my time zones. I forgot when Chase had asked to do this. I forgot I already committed to Bengals.com radio. So, yeah, my apologies.
It's all good.
We're back.
TD is a man in high demand across all NFL markets. So we'll get back with TD coming up next. Also, Chad Withrow from Outkick is going to join us, talk a little bit of Titans. Also going to talk some Vols as they get ready to head up to Columbus next weekend to take on Ohio State in the first round of the college football playoff. Chad Withrow joins us next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today, wrapping up the week. And we are now joined on our phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by Chad Withrow of Outkick, brought to you by A Moment's Peace Salon and Day Spa. Chad, thanks for taking some time with us. I know it's a little earlier than your usual hit, but glad to have you on for a little bit here.
Yeah, no problem at all. Good talking with you guys.
Well, Chad, I want to start with the Titans here. They had that big emotional win down in Houston 2 weeks ago, and it seems like any momentum that they had from that game went out the door in that first quarter in Washington. Back-to-back duds of games. Why do you think it's been that the Titans just can't seem to string together back-to-back good weeks over the past couple of seasons?
Yeah, the term I keep coming up with is rudderless. That's the way I feel about this organization right now. I think Jeffrey Simmons is a really good player. I think Tony Pollard's a really good player. I think they got a few good players on the team. But overall, from ownership on down, it's this sense of no real direction and nothing that really anchors you in that you feel good about as a fan if you're watching this team. So if you were to ask me, what do you point to as, oh, here's the strength, here's where this team's going to go, they've built well in the draft, or they've done well in free agency, or they got a great quarterback that you can hang your hat on, or any of those things, or even a great defense. They just don't possess any of those things. So it's really difficult to know where this team is headed. And I thought the scene after the Texans win was bizarre, with the emotions and everything from it. I mean, guys, this is the NFL, and I understand that this is the city where this team came from, but beating a division opponent 1 out of 2 times is not cause for celebrating like it's the Super Bowl. And we've seen a definite hangover. I mean, the players even admitted there was a hangover from that loss in Washington, and then again this past week, and what was just a horrendous loss to Jacksonville. So there's not a lot of great things to say about the team right now, and it's very frustrating because this is a market that obviously wants a winner.
What exactly, or in general even, what do you need to see on Sunday against the Bengals just to, I don't want to say give you a sign of hope, but show you that this team does actually have a direction?
Yeah, so it's a great question, TD. I don't think there's anything from a player standpoint there's no ownership thing that you're going to watch to say, oh, ownership has it figured out, or even anything that Rand Carthon could do this week that would say, oh, they're heading the right direction here. Here's one tangible thing that I would like to see in this game. There's a lot of questions right now about Brian Callahan in year one, and it's understandable given the season they've had, even though it's his first season. I'd like to see a solid plan. I mean, this is your old team. You should know exactly what they're going to try to do. I'd like to leave this game, guys, saying, that was a really good attack by the Titans. They're not as good as Cincinnati, and I don't think they're going to win. But I'd like to leave the game saying there were some things drawn up offensively. There were some little things shifted with the defense that really worked in that game for the Titans. And that's a good sign for the head coach putting out a game plan and all of his coaches. So I do think that's one thing you could take away from this game. Brian Callahan versus his old team. How does he perform as a coach? I'll definitely be watching that.
Talking with Chad Withrow from Outkick. Chad, Will Levis, similar to the team, it felt like you started to see an uptick. He had 4 straight games where it looked like he was taking care of the ball a little bit better. We were starting to see those wow throws. Didn't see much of that on Sunday. Is this a game for his development and the evaluation of the young quarterback? Do you need to see him bounce back against what's been not a great Bengals defense pretty much all season long?
Yeah, they struggled on defense. I mean, yeah, he's got to play great. And it's tough with his supporting cast. I get all that. But for me to even think about him, possibly being the future of the team, he's going to have to really play a lot better. He missed, 4 throws late in that game against Jacksonville. It's oftentimes what you don't really see with Will Levis. Like, we all see the arm, we see the athleticism, we see that he's fearless and all those things, and we can see some of those wow throws from him. But there are times where he's trying to fit the ball in a spot and he can't do it, or it's a little bit off target, and on that play there's someone wide open, right, that we're not looking at when we're just watching the ball during the football game. Then you go back and realize, oh, that was a misread. He missed this guy that was open. Or on certain sacks, it's easy to say, boy, the offensive line isn't any good. And then you go back and look at it and say, oh, he held the ball too long. He actually should have thrown it right here when this guy was about to come open. Just things like that he still struggles with, that he struggled with at Kentucky. that I just don't see him as a 25-year-old second-year player suddenly possessing. But I mean, he's got to play a lot better if the Titans are going to consider him at all.
You know, you made great points there. And this is something I've said, right? He's made progress, right? But the progress that he's made is to where he should have been back in September. And that's the big issue. But I want to ask you this. When you look at Will Levis, when you look at this just team overall, do you where are you in the, hey, they shouldn't try to win out versus try to win out and build momentum?
I mean, look, as a guy who wants to see the Titans do well, ultimately, that's from here, that is a Titans fan, I hope they lose every game the rest of the way. I really do. I am tired of I'm tired of Jacksonville being the one who always gets the top 3 pick.
Yeah.
Right, and they can kind of build their roster out that way. Now, it hasn't always worked out for Jacksonville, as we've seen a lot this season, but they're going to need a quarterback. I'm starting to like Shedeur Sanders a lot more the more I watch him throughout the year. There's some guys that I'm okay with, but most of all, you just need really dynamic football players. And you're not going to get that picking, 8, 9, 10, 11, but you could get that picking 1 or 2. And that's where I'd like to see the Titans at. I don't think win-loss record, other than Brian Callahan's job status, really means a lot the rest of the way. So just, asking me personally, I want to see him with a high draft pick. And I'd like to see some progress from Brian Callahan, but I'd still like to see the team maybe lose close games so they can get that high draft pick.
Talking with Chad Withrow from Outkick here on Stillman and Company. Chad, quickly over to the college football playoff. Tennessee heading over to Columbus next week to take on Ohio State. I wanted to get your thoughts on the comments from Ohio State's athletic director yesterday, basically begging his fan base not to sell tickets to Tennessee fans. Do you think that Tennessee could face a watered-down horseshoe next week because Ohio State fans are just so frustrated with the performance of Ryan Day in these big games?
I mean, first off, Tennessee fans are nuts, and I'm one of them. I went to the school, so never underestimate the insanity of the Tennessee fan base with leaking of the promo codes and everything else to get their hands on more tickets in Columbus. There could be 20 to 30,000 Tennessee fans there. I don't know. We'll see the stadium when the game happens. It's still going to be overwhelmingly Ohio State fans at that game, and it's going to be a home field environment for Ohio State, regardless of how many Tennessee fans invade the shoe. I think the troublesome part for Ohio State is not the Tennessee fans that might be there. It's the anxiety of the Ohio State fans that are there. Because unless you are inside of that rivalry, you don't truly appreciate the existential crisis that is losing to Michigan time after time, especially when you have the much better team and you're at home, which they did this year. So if Tennessee was able to score first or get up 2 scores, it's going to be a nervous crowd that starts to turn on that team a little bit. I could see that happening for Ohio State. So that, to me, is what's to watch with the atmosphere of that game, is how bad does it get if Tennessee jumps out to a lead on Ohio State in that game? Because those fans are thinking right now, to me, I think it's national championship game or bust for Ryan Day. Maybe it's national championship or bust. To remove the stain of that Michigan loss for that fan base, they may have to go win it all.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. At the very least, I think they have to get by Oregon into the semifinals for Ryan Day to feel good about his job status. Last one for you here, Chad. If that were to happen, if Ryan Day was to lose to Tennessee next week and was fired, how do you feel about Mike Vrabel possibly being his successor in Columbus?
I'm a big Mike Vrabel fan. I think he would crush it in the college game. I think he'd do great at Ohio State. I also don't think Mike Vrabel wants to mess with college football. I think he badly wants an NFL job. He does not want to take on NIL, transfer portal, all of that. He does not have the patience for it. So while I think he would do well at Ohio State, I don't think it's going to happen. Here's what I would do if I was Ohio State. I'd call over to Tempe, Arizona, and talk to Kenny Dillingham and see what it costs to get him to leave his alma mater to come to Ohio State, because I think that guy is young and he is the real deal. So that's what I'm doing if I'm Ohio State.
That's not a bad idea. I think there is a number that could possibly get him to Columbus. Chad, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on this Friday. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
Hey, same to you guys. Have a good weekend.
Good talking to you, man.
Chad Withrow from Outkick, brought to you by Moments Peace Salon and Day Spa. A little earlier here on this Fireball Hot Take Friday, but always appreciate Chad coming on. Great insights as always. We will take a break. When we come back, we're going to kick off hour number 2 of the program. We'll talk a little bit more about the college football playoff, and don't forget, Corey Curtis is going to join us coming up at 3:15. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today here on this Fireball Hot Take Friday on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2 on this Friday, Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. We were in yesterday as well, with you till 6 o'clock. Just talked with Chad Withrow of Outkick. Always great to have Chad on. We'll be joined by Corey Curtis coming up in the next segment. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. TD, talking with Chad there a little bit about that college football playoff game between the Buckeyes and Vols coming up next Saturday night. Have you seen this stuff from the Ohio State athletic director? He had a press conference yesterday and basically came out and said, hey, we need to stop selling our tickets to Tennessee fans because they're trying to take over Columbus next weekend.
Ooh.
And I think it all stems from that fan base is just unhappy with Ryan Day because they want national championships, and he has not delivered anything close to that.
They want national championships, and you got to beat Michigan.
Right. Those are the two most important things.
Those are the two things that you got to be able to do. So I think, when you look at the Vols going out there, if they could get off to an early start, that's the big way. And they run the football well. You know what I mean? And so if you get off to an early start by running the football well in the first couple drives and getting some points on the board, you could take away a road, opposing team stadium, even if there's 108,000 people in there.
I understand that it makes more sense in terms of weather to possibly put the Texas Clemson game in the late night spot because it's going to be cold in Columbus next Saturday night. But that's the best game of the weekend. It had to be in the primetime spot. They got, Chris Fowler and Kirk Herbstreit calling that game. I really think it's going to be a coin flip in that one. And if Tennessee is bringing, 25, 30,000 fans up there, if it's 30% Vols fans in that stadium, that little difference might be enough to make it a little easier on Nico up there because Nico, I'm trying to think of the places that he played on the road this year. Georgia, I guess, was probably the toughest place, and they lost that game. Arkansas at night was not super easy, and they lost that game. I don't know if he played anywhere else that was like a super cathedral of college football type atmosphere.
Well, I think Nico is really the wild card here. And I loved his comments earlier this year when he said he actually would rather play in an opposing team stadium because he loves the feeling of making all of them leave upset. He likes that. But he's the wild card also because we're talking about a California kid, and it's going to get cold out there.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, he better, invest in a scuba suit, you know what I mean, to keep him warm under that uniform. Because it's gonna be tough, and especially holding the football and throwing the football. He's going to have to get used to doing that, in that cold environment because it's different, and your hands, like, it gets bad.
I haven't looked at the forecast for Columbus yet, but you would assume mid to late December night in Ohio, it's not going to be warm out there. Looking at their schedule, Tennessee only played 4 road games this year. If I'm counting correctly, they played at Vanderbilt, which, as much as I hate it, there's a lot of Tennessee fans that come out to that game. So that wasn't a raucous road environment. Georgia, of course, is always going to be tough. They lost that game 31-17. Arkansas lost that game 19-14 in Fayetteville. The only road win that Tennessee had this year outside of Vanderbilt was at Oklahoma, which that is a tough one. But that one was Josh Heupel's homecoming. So they had a little bit extra on their shoulder there. But I don't know. I think we're not going to know until we see it of what Nico is going to look like in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
Because he is only 20 years old and having to go into the Horseshoe in a playoff game on a December Saturday night. That's not going to be easy.
Card. That is the wild card.
And I think it's going to come down to him. If he can make a few plays and take care of the football, they can win that game. Like, Ohio State's talented, but they haven't put it all together more than a couple of times this year.
Well, see, the thing that he brings to the table also, and they do have to make special teams is an area where they have to make sure they win too, because that was kind of a margin in that Indiana game. But the thing that he brings to the table also is that, you play good defense on the first 2 downs, and it's 3rd and 12, right? And he's one of those guys that break the pocket, get you a 13-yard gain, and by the way, step out of bounds before you could get a hit on him, and the defense is all like, God dang.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And those are the things that he brings to the table. And that's where I think he's really going to have to make the difference in those hitting hidden yards, those hidden downs, being able to give yourself another series to keep working the way down the field.
It's going to be a fun one. I can't wait. I think the best part of the new college football playoff is these campus site games, and we're going to get 4 good ones starting next weekend. That Notre Dame Indiana one next Friday night, I think, is going to be a lot of fun too.
Mm-hmm.
I know Notre Dame on paper clearly has the talent advantage. Like, it's Notre Dame versus Indiana in football. That's going to go the Fighting Irish's way in terms of recruiting rankings and all that stuff. But as Curt Cignetti has told everyone, Google me, I win everywhere I go. And I don't know, there might be a little bit of magic with that Indiana team trying to prove that they can compete with the big boys.
And that D'Angelo Pond is no joke. Man.
Nope.
Like, he put the clamps on Jeremiah Smith, and not too many people have been able to do that. So there's definitely talent on that roster. I think Notre Dame, though, is like that Northern Illinois loss. They took that personally, and they've played awesome football since then. And that pass defense is legit. Coach Freeman, he has those guys in order. That's another game that I'm going to be watching. Saturday night is going to be fun, man.
That's Friday night. So
Friday night.
Yeah, Notre Dame Indiana is Friday.
Tonight.
Next Friday. Next Friday.
Yeah. That's
so
what I mean.
We got a week, but next Friday is Notre Dame Indiana, and then the Saturday it's a triple header.
Yeah.
I think SMU Penn State leads it off, which there are no bad games, but I would say that's the one I'm looking forward to the least.
Watch that game, Titans perspective. Watch Abdul Carter.
Right.
Watch 11.
That is true. Watch Abdul Carter and see what he can do out there. And then the second game would be Texas Clemson, which I'm looking at that one mostly because I want to see if Clemson is actually, are they a quality enough team to be in this tournament, or do they just get lucky that Miami lost to Syracuse?
I think that's the case. Like, I'm not a big Dabo Swinney fan at all.
I'm not a huge fan either.
I'm not.
And we were talking with Caroline Fenton about this on Wednesday. I think it was Nick Frazier asked the question of, if Dabo was to win this game and beat Arizona State and ends up in the college football semifinals, does that kind of justify his old school, I'm not going to adapt to college football, it has to adapt to me and we're still going to win? Does that kind of justify his mindset, or is it just kind of a lucky run?
I don't think it justifies it, because I feel that they still have pre-NIL players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's still the talent, that's on that roster. Like, I think you have to adapt to the times. And for me, if Dabo doesn't like it, hey, look, there's a retirement, fund that you could look into, and you'll be all right.
Well, and all of these teams that are having success, at least a lot of them, are bringing in experienced transfer quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, Will Howard at Ohio State. You could go on, but he still wants to develop these guys. And ever since Trevor Lawrence left, he hasn't been able to find another quarterback to fill those shoes. DJU was supposed to be the next guy, and obviously he hasn't panned out outside of a decent year at Oregon State last year. And Cade Klubnik, I don't think Cade Klubnik is bad, but he's not Deshaun Watson. He's not Trevor Lawrence. And I think Dabo needs that star quarterback to kind of help carry him to those national championship contending scenarios.
Yeah, and I mean, most coaches do need that.
Right.
I think at this point, because there's so many outstanding signal callers out there, you do need that. But I think the way of doing things has passed Dabo Swinney over. And I'm sorry, he rubbed me the wrong way when he talked that foolishness about, oh, well, he doesn't want the kids getting paid, this, that, and the third. Well, my man, you what's his contract? $9 million or something like that.
Lots
so it's
of money.
okay for you to get paid, but it's not. Heck out of here with that, man.
Yeah, he's rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, and it is insane how quick it's flipped, because 5 years ago, after he won that national championship with Trevor Lawrence, there was talk of, like, whatever Saban retires, that's Dabo's job. He's going to be the Alabama guy. I don't even think Alabama looked his way when Nick Saban retired last year, because there are guys who are more willing to play the game of college football now rather than what it was 5 to 10 years ago.
Mhm.
Dabo's not willing to do it,
Yep.
but he still found his way into the playoffs somehow. And we'll see how that goes against Texas.
Yeah, I think he'll
next
find
week.
his way about it. This
I don't
weekend.
think it's going to take long for Texas to dispatch the Clemson Tigers. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to chime in. We'd love to hear from you. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, Corey Curtis is going to join us from News 2 for his weekly visit. We'll talk to him about all things Titans as they get ready for the Bengals on Sunday. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport, in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport sitting in for Jared Stillman once again today. Talking some Titans as they get ready to take on the Cincinnati Bengals, second straight home game over at Nissan Stadium on Sunday afternoon. And we are now joined on our phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by Corey Curtis of News 2 for his weekly visit to the program. Corey, I promise I will not bring up your slam dunk guarantee about Will Levis's 4,000 yards.
You just did.
Well, I won't ask. We'll leave that to Jared next week. I won't ask you a question about it, at least.
Okay. Yeah.
Titans coming off a tough one on Sunday against the Jaguars, Corey. What has been the issue for Tennessee? I mean, it's been over 2 years since they've won back-to-back games. What have you seen that just hasn't allowed the Titans to find a little bit of a rhythm with his current group of coaches and players?
Well, I mean, I think that's a multi-layered answer, but where I always start with everything is up front, and that the game being won, in the trenches. And, they need to be able to dominate in the trenches. And there are moments where, those things happen, but they just don't happen, consistently enough, where you score a touchdown and it gets called back for a holding call, questionable holding call, but still a holding call. And so, does Will Levis have to be better? Yes, he does. But, we've been looking at an offensive line that, has had a trajectory that hasn't been great for a few years, and they're still trying to pull out of that. I mean, I think J.C. Latham's kind of hit a wall a little bit. Do I think he'll be fine? Yeah, I do. But I think Peter Skoronski's playing better. And I think Daniel Brunskill's done an admirable job filling in. And I think, Dylan Radins has been Dylan Radins. But, that's, to me, that's got to get fixed. And, Tron and I were talking about this yesterday. They need a dude. They need a playmaker on the outside, a guy who makes it happen with the ball in his hands. Calvin Ridley can really run, but they need a guy who, when the ball gets in his hands, can make people miss and can do it. So, I mean, and the quarterback's got to hit people when they're open. I mean, like I said, it's multi-layered. But for me, it always starts inside.
When you look at this defense and them being ranked number one, 175 yards allowed per game passing.
Yeah.
Is that a facade, or is that something that you actually say, hey, look, man, they got a good pass defense?
I think that saying they've got the best pass defense statistically is correct, but I do think it's a little bit of a facade. As far as, I don't look at them and say they're a dominant pass defense. I mean, we've all seen what dominant pass defenses look like. Harold Landry's a good player. Arden Keyes had a decent season after a slow start, but they need a closer. I mean, the Bengals aren't great, but when they need a big sack, Trey Hendrickson's there. And so, the Titans need that for their pass defense. They also have played the bulk of the season without 3 of their 4 starters in the secondary. So I think they deserve huge congratulations for what they've done, doing it with a rookie, a free agent, and was Mike Brown on the team when the season started?
Yeah, he was. Yeah, okay. He and Matthew Jackson, they fought it out.
Yeah, that's right. So you got a rookie, a guy who came off the bench, and another guy who I think you picked up after week 1, starting at corner, and Darrell Baker. I think Darrell Baker's been great. I mean, for a guy that picked up off the street, I mean. Look, I still contend that Darrell Baker and Jarvis Brownley are the best corner tandem they've had in years.
With Jarvis Brownley moving forward to next year, does this feel like it's something that's sustainable and he can really be at the top across from, you would assume, L'Jarius Sneed on the other side and maybe move Chidobe Awuzie to more of a reserve role? Or do you think that he's probably going to fade back into being that 4th or 5th corner when next year rolls around and everybody's healthy?
Well, a couple things there. Awuzie makes too much money to fall into a reserve role. So if he's not a starter, he's probably a June cut where they can spread out the cap money. If he's not a starter, look, I'm not prepared to say he's not a starter, but I have a hard time taking Brownlee off the field. I'm gonna put it to you that way. You know, you want him to be out there and to continue to get better because he looks like he can be that dude for you. And so, you know, do I think Brownlee is sustainable? Not only do I think he's sustainable, I think he can get better.
Yeah,
and that's exciting.
Yeah, I believe so too. When you look at Tavondre Sweat, and let's just look at them like, you know, right down the middle. Tavondre Sweat, Kenneth Murray, no legit safety name opposite Amani Hooker.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how they filled that heart of the defense?
Well, I mean, they've had to patch it through with a number of people. And I mean, even when you had Quandre Diggs, you knew that was a Band-Aid.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, because you got him on a 1-year deal and he's an aging veteran, played pretty well for them, but you knew after this season, no matter how Quandre played, you were probably going to be looking for a long-term solution next year anyway. And so I still think they're looking long-term at that safety pairing, and they probably need to save some money with that pairing with Hook anyway. And Hook's playing really good football this year. So, I mean, he's earning every penny that I think he's been making. You know, at the linebacker spot, you know, it's kind of like running back. There's a lot of guys who can do it. I mean, you know, Jack Gibbons came in and was a tackling machine. Luke Gifford led them in tackles, you know, this last week with 12. And look, I guess that's my way of saying, if you don't have a guy who's truly special, you know, your Ray Lewis in the middle, your Fred Warner, you know, then there's just a lot of guys. And, you know, Kenneth Murray can do some cool stuff that they want him to do by just being an attacking, you know, linebacker, but they have to determine if the juice is worth the squeeze on that, because he makes pretty good money. But I don't think they need to spend money on that spot opposite of Kenneth next year.
Lots of holes for this Titans team to look at. I mean, you mentioned a few of them on defense, and you were talking earlier about the offensive line. We know right tackle is a spot that has to be addressed, and it's so rare that a quality tackle hits the free agent market. Are the Titans going to have to spend an early round pick on a tackle again this year to finally shore up that spot?
Probably. You know, I do think they need to bring in a veteran which is what I thought they should have done this year, to give themselves some security in that spot. But I also don't think it should be a first round pick, because if you use it a first round pick, then you're back in the same scenario you were with Jack Conklin, where now you're going to have to pay him along with J.C. Latham and Peter Skoronski, and you're not going to be able to do it. So I think you need to look for a right tackle in the second or the third round. Believe me, they're out there. What round did Runyon come out of?
Runyon, I want to say, was a third rounder.
Third.
You talking about the Eagles, the run, or that the Titans drafted? I want to say it was second round. I want to say
second round. Okay, and then Big Dave Stewart was a fourth rounder. You know, and also Michael Ruse was a second rounder. You know, so they have found good tackles in later, you know, outside of the first round in the draft. You know, Jack Conklin was obviously a good one in the top 10, but then you find yourself in that position of having to make a decision of, are we going to pay him or are we not going to pay him? And inevitably, when you don't pick up that option, then, you know, the guy's hurt and he leaves. Yeah. And so I don't think they can afford to be in that position with a third core player on their offensive line. So I think they need to, in the first round, go with edge or receiver, you know, one of those spots, but, you know, and then in the second or the third, get the tackle that they need.
Yeah, I think you got to look at how the board falls and how it matches your needs. As far as overall,
they're also going to be drafting too high in the first round to be drafting a right tackle anyway.
Yeah, well, I'm not really. I mean, the Eagles drafted Lane Johnson 5th overall, and I think that pick has panned out pretty well.
Yeah, that worked. That worked. I think, but the left tackle, where did they get him?
Yeah, well, they signed him late and they built him in. But I mean, there are free agent additions, you know, that you could point to, undrafted free agent and later picks at every position. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I that's why I don't get into the whole, hey, you don't draft a guy because he plays this high. To me, if a guy can help you win, you get him. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. I just worry about the finances of how it's all going to come together with the way your roster's been constructed to this point.
Yeah.
But you make choices, and I agree with you. Ultimately, if you think this guy helps us win football games, you figure it out later.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it pans down to, because if you're winning football games, you could always figure out how to get the other stuff to work. But I want to say this though, with Rand Carthon, like, what are your thoughts on Rand? I know, it hasn't been good enough, but do you feel what happened last year and what's happening this year, is that grounds to just say, hey man, kick rocks?
I mean, that's tough to say, because last year was different because you had the whole the Vrabel partnership with it. This year is different. I think you have to look at the draft this year and say, largely, and I know this is Jared's show and he'll disagree with it. Largely you have to like the picks. You like J.C. Latham, you like Tavondre Sweat, you like Jarvis Brownley Jr., and you've got some other guys on the end there who I think are going to help you down the line. The free agent stuff hasn't necessarily worked out, but a lot of that has been injury driven. Now, are there decisions that I didn't like? Yep, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the decisions to let go of Molden and Hassan Haskins. I didn't like the decision to not bring in a veteran right tackle. I didn't like the decisions, to let Molden go to bring in Jamal Adams. But are those moves grounds for firing? I would say no. I would say those moves are mistakes. But what I don't know is the inner workings. How is everyone getting along? How is everyone communicating? Is everyone happy with the working relationship with everyone? And that's something that I can't speak of. But overall, this year is kind of half glass full. Draft class looks pretty good. Free agency class hasn't quite worked out like you hoped.
Corey, always appreciate your time. It is a Fireball Hot Take Friday, so we got to make sure to, do you have a hot take for us this week before you get out of here?
My pathetic Chicago Bears, I have a new draft strategy for them. Trade 2 first-rounders for Kyle Shanahan and get a real coach.
Wow. I saw that proposed on Twitter somewhere that could be a move. I mean, maybe if Kyle Shanahan's not happy over there, maybe that's a move that they could make.
Well, maybe with Sean McVay, with Matthew Stafford getting older, maybe we get him for 2 first-rounders. I'll take either one.
Corey, as always, appreciate your time. Hope you have a great weekend.
All right, you guys have a great show. Have a good weekend and happy holidays.
Appreciate it.
Corey Curtis, News 2, joining us as always at 3:15 on a Friday. Those coach trades, we talked about it a lot last year when there were rumors that Vrabel might get traded to the Patriots. It's hard to pull off because in order to make that trade happen, you probably got to wait around a while and let a lot of the top candidates go off the board.
Yeah. No, you don't do that. And Kyle Shanahan, he's been a solid coach, but I think we need to dial back the whole 2 first-round picks. No.
I mean, it's the going rate for these coaches when they do get traded. At least Peyton went for a first and a third or something like that, and he was retired.
Yeah, I don't do that.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to text or call, our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Always appreciate Corey Curtis stopping by. When we come back, there was some talk there about the Titans cornerbacks, and we're going to dive into that coming up next. What are the expectations for L'Jarius Sneed when he returns from injury and heads into next year, his second year in the two-tone blue? Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Fireball Hot Take Friday is presented by Fireball Cinema Whiskey. That's right. It's the weekend. It means it's time to celebrate. It means it's time to rejoice. Whether you're hanging out with your friends or whatever it may be, there's no better time to enjoy Fireball Whiskey than right now. That's right. Be sure to enjoy ice-cold Fireball Whiskey, either in the shot form or grab yourself a bottle. That's Fireball Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
I mean, 52% of people said. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared today. Nashville's best deal this week is 312 Pizza Company in Germantown. 312 Pizza Company serves the best pizza in town as well as Chicago-style eats like Chicago dogs, Italian beef sandwiches, and more. Check them out at 371 Monroe Street in Germantown or order takeout online at 312pizzaco.com. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals now to get a half off a $30 gift card to 312 Pizza Company while supplies last. Again, Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared today. Great chats with Chad Withrow and Corey Curtis over the last hour. Always appreciate them taking the time. Over the next hour, I want to get into some position groups that I think the Titans, it's not a dire need for them. And we'll start with cornerbacks. We talked a little bit about that with Corey in the last segment.
They're set.
Corner seems completely full. Like, it would not surprise me. Maybe you add a depth guy here and there and maybe some undrafted free agents, maybe a 6th or 7th round pick, but you do not have to worry about cornerback heading into next year.
No.
I think the biggest question mark is L'Jarius Sneed, which is how is he going to come back after this injury, possibly going to miss the rest of the year at this point. I would say most likely going to miss the rest of the year at this point. How does he come back in his second year trying to stay healthy and be the lockdown cornerback the Titans traded for him to be?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. That's going to be the wild card. But the thing that's really interesting to me is the fact that Jarvis Brownley Jr. has done so well. And mind you, this is what, a 5th round pick?
5th round pick, yeah.
Starting for you and lining up against the Justin Jeffersons and
having Justin Jefferson say he's going to be a star in this league.
Having DK Metcalf say unsolicited, this guy's a good player. I think when you have that, it could help offset. But the fact of the matter is this L'Jarius Sneed thing has to hit. It has to work for them, and he has to be the impact player that they traded and signed him to be. And I believe, because I know, you're here on this show normally that, he's faking it. I know you'll hear that, how could an injury you last that long? Hey, listen, everybody's body heals differently. We don't know the details other than the fact that it's worse than initially diagnosed. Once they went in and they saw some things, it caused a red flag, and so he's out. But I will say this: I don't believe it's connected to the knee, even though I know technically, hey, your quad is connected to the thigh bone's connected to the knee bone. Like that game, like we could play that game, but I don't believe that they're related. You know what I'm saying? It's a separate injury that happened.
Yeah, that I never understood that. You'll see people, and it's not just Jared who are saying we knew about the injury concerns with L'Jarius Sneed. It's not like he tore his ACL. Like it's a completely different injury. You would hope that this doesn't have any carryover into next year. I'm looking at his contract right now. After next year, there is a potential out for the Titans. You could get out with just $12 million in dead cap after next year. The Titans are really hoping they don't have to use that because this is a guy that you traded for. The Titans haven't had a real lockdown outside cornerback since maybe Cortland Finnegan. Is that is that the last guy? Like they've had some good ones. Jason McCourty was obviously solid here for a long time. Alteron Werner had one great year before he went to Tampa Bay and kind of didn't live up to that big deal that he got. Malcolm Butler had some good years.
Yeah, they've had some good ones.
They've had some good ones. They have not had an elite cornerback, and that is what L'Jarius Sneed was supposed to be. And I just don't think how many games did L'Jarius really play this year?
4. Yeah.
And the Dolphins game, he clearly was not 100%.
Right.
That could have been a disaster
he
for him in that game.
He got cooked 2 or 3 times. I mean, there's no mistake in that. And then obviously, I think he pushed it after that injury because the injury happened early because you hear these guys, oh, well, he played 99% of the snaps. How could he have gotten hurt? There's a thing called adrenaline. You know what I mean? That you play with and that will push you through an injury. But I think that is probably a part of this whole long-lasting time that he's been out because he told me literally that it happened early in the game.
Yeah, and he just thought he could play through it.
He told me, and he said he played through it. And I think in playing through that, he worsened the situation. And so that, again, we have this short-sighted approach to so many things, whereas I think he probably should have not played, but wanting to, prove himself, and I get it. I think it hurt bigger in the long run.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned it on Jake and TD back when this injury happened that while I was in college, James Mitchell was a tight end for Virginia Tech. He ended up playing with the Lions for a couple of years. But in a game, he tore his ACL and did not know until the next morning. He played through it on the torn ACL, woke up the next day, and his knee had swelled up. And he realized, oh, I seriously hurt my knee, went in, missed the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know in the moment in some of these injuries. I understand that the quad injury different than a torn ACL, but sometimes the adrenaline and you're out there playing, you want to play through it. You don't realize until the next day, oh, wow, I really messed it up. And L'Jarius Sneed, obviously a disappointing first season when you trade a third-round pick for a guy, pay him a contract, paying $20-something million a year.
Yeah, he's making big money.
Yeah, $76 million over 4 years, so not quite 20, $19 million per year. You expect the guy to come out and immediately be one of the best players on your team, and that hasn't happened. Same thing with Calvin Ridley. You've seen it get better throughout the year, but early on he had those.
It's been up and down.
He had those 2 games where he had like 2 catches for 7 yards combined or something like that. Like, it hasn't been great, but you sign these guys to 4-year deals, not 1-year deals. Yeah. And I think next year, whether the Titans are going to be contenders, a lot of that is going to ride on whether Calvin Ridley can be wide receiver 1 and L'Jarius Sneed can be cornerback 1 in what is a deep group of corners. Because if Sneed isn't healthy, you have depth behind him, but even though Jarvis Brownley's been good and Chidobe Awuzie is a good player, they're not having the impact that L'Jarius Sneed can have.
No, and Awuzie was, a high cost free agent that they brought in too. And look, I think that cornerback situation is good, but I think it needs to be better considering the amount of assets that have been put into it.
L'Jarius Sneed going to be a key piece moving forward for the Titans as he works his way back from injury. But Jarvis Brownley Jr., he has really stepped up and made some plays in his rookie season, being kind of thrown into the fire after the injuries to Sneed and Awuzie and others. We'll talk more about the 5th-round rookie out of Louisville coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to chime in, Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport with you in for Jared Stillman today on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
How is Jarvis Brownley benefiting maybe from the extra work he's been getting?
Oh, he's getting better. Anytime you get a lot of reps, and obviously like Jarvis, he's young. He hasn't seen a lot. You go back to the game where they ran the jet orbit motion. He's never had that. And sometimes you get mad, during the course of the game that you wish he executed. But if he hasn't seen it and he hasn't been in it, how does he know how to adjust to it? So the game for him is starting to slow down because now it's just not about his alignments. It's not about his technique where he's supposed to be. Now it's about situational football. How are they going to try to attack me on this situation? When they get in plus territory, what do they do? So now it's about he's out there. He's been out there competing at a high level. But now for him, it's about learning the game within the game from a situational standpoint to take away the plays that they're trying to attack him with in those situations.
That was Titans defensive coordinator Denard Wilson talking about Jarvis Brownley earlier this year, talking about how the 5th-round rookie out of Louisville, he's had trial by fire this year, and he has made the most of it so far. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. TD, I think out of all of the bright spots that you can find with this Titans team, it's been a rough season, but Jarvis Brownley is certainly one of the brightest ones. Getting a guy like that on day 3 of the draft who looks like he can be a long-term piece at cornerback for you and add to this room that we were just mentioning. It is so deep. You've got L'Jarius Sneed. You've got Chidobe Awuzie. You have Roger McCreary. Now you add another young piece in there that can continue to give you top-line talent as well as depth in that position.
Yeah, and I think to Corey's point, Corey Curtis, when he mentioned earlier that he's only going to get better.
Right.
And that was the perfect lead-in by Ian, our great producer here. It was a great job of setting up how this guy could get better because there are some things. I remember in talking to him about the Quentin Johnston TD against the Chargers, right? He said, man, I never saw a guy turn a route up like that to that spot. I had no clue that that's where he was going to go. And these are things that he hasn't seen before. He hasn't experienced some of these route combos. Like there was another, I forget which one it was, because there were 3 where, everybody was like, oh, that's Kenneth Murray's fault. It was actually, on Jarvis.
Right.
2, I know for sure. But I remember him saying like he hadn't seen that concept before and he was kind of stuck. Oh, it wasn't a touchdown. It was a deep pass against the Bills. Keon Coleman, when he caught that 40-yarder to set up, it was one of those things where he hadn't seen it before. So he kind of misinterpreted how he was supposed to play it and boom, a big play happened. But here's the good thing about a guy like Jarvis Brownley Jr., who is such, an outstanding prospect, coached by former MTSU DB coach Steve Ellis, who coached Kevin Byard and some other DBs, currently coaching Quincy Riley at Louisville, who was also MTSU. But anyhow, I think when you have a guy like that has that memory, right? So he's seen it before, so now he knows how to react. And I think having seen this before, knowing how to react, that's going to keep that big play from happening. The other thing that I just love about him, and it's funny because I remember in Senior Bowl watching him, and after that first practice, I went to him. I told him, I say, don't take this the wrong way, but if you and I were teammates, like we would just fight every day. And that's a compliment that I give to cornerbacks that are, I think that are feisty, that are always, they're a nuisance. Like you're like, come on, man, leave me the heck alone. But that's what he is. And that's why I can't wait for this matchup with Chase, because Jamar Chase gets irritated with that's why L'Jarius Sneed is his arch nemesis. So I can't wait to see how that works. But that feistiness, that aggressiveness is something that you don't want to take it away. Let him go ahead and play with it. You just got to help him harness it, so to speak, or not even harness it, but do it at the right times. And like I told him, stop wearing, you got to wear the same. If they wear white, you wear white gloves. You know what I mean? You got to do that.
Yeah, and you're right. Facing Jamar Chase this week, he's already faced Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Terry McLaurin. It's like he's getting the best of the best week in and week out, which should only make him better. And like you said, there are rookie moments from him.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Colts game, and was that his second start? Yes. His first start was in Miami.
Yeah, at the crib, his first start.
I remember the Colts game, watching that one. It felt like every other play, you were either seeing Josh Downs beat him for something or him come up and make a great play. There was the one play that they whistled him for pass interference, which wasn't great at the goal line. But, but it just felt like it was one of those things where you kind of got to take the good with the bad. But I feel like as the season has gone along, we've seen more of the good from Jarvis Brownley Jr. as he continues to grow.
Yeah, and that's the really positive part. And the other thing that we haven't really talked about, and no one really had, he's very aggressive in run coverage, like run support. Like he'll come up and he'll make a play. You know what I mean? And that feistiness, it comes to light there. And then also you look at wide receiver screens. This is a guy that will blow through the receiver's block and go make the tackle. I really like watching him play. He's one of the guys that, going to the games, like I'm like, I want to see what 2-9 going to do today. You know what I mean? I want to see what he's going to do. He's someone I if I were a fan, like I would pay to see him play.
It is a good problem to have, but the Titans are going to have plenty of depth at cornerback heading into next year. If everybody's healthy, you've got L'Jarius Sneed, Chidobe Awuzie, Jarvis Brownley, Roger McCreary, Darrell Baker's played great since they signed him. How does that sort itself out? I guess you just kind of see who's best out there, but it's a good problem to have so many top line options.
You could never have as many, like you could never have too many cornerbacks.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that over and over again, with this team, whether it's, LaShawn Sims being thrust into action.
I've never seen you before, 3-6.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think I was Clowney that said that. Yeah. But, I mean, you could never have too many of them. So
you're right.
It's okay.
We've seen LaShawn Sims, Breon Borders, Trey Avery is one of the more recent ones who cornerbacks seem to get injured around here a lot. And I know that is one of the positions that you see a lot of injuries at. It's physical and a lot of running, and you'll see the soft tissue injuries.
And you can rotate them in.
And
too,
having 5 options that you feel pretty good about is good. And like we were saying, I think this is a position where the Titans probably aren't going to have to spend a lot of resources at. There are a lot of holes on this team. You look at wide receiver and edge. Those are 2 of the big ones that we've talked about. Tackle, safety, and you only have limited resources. It's nice to have cornerback as one that you can say, all right, we've got a group there. We can push that to the side as one that we feel good about heading into 2025.
Absolutely. And I think that's a group. And that begs the question, if they're at number 2 or 3 and Travis Hunter's on the board, like what do you do? You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know. That'd be an interesting.
That's a very good point, because we were talking yesterday that we feel like Travis Hunter's best position is probably cornerback in the NFL, because you can use him as a full-time cornerback and work him in on offense. If your best position is cornerback, and if you have the second pick, Shadur Sanders goes first, maybe that's a trade down spot. And I'm sure that you could get a haul from somebody wanting to move up for Travis Hunter or a quarterback at that spot. Again, a lot of hypotheticals here,
but that's the situation. You got to hope you could trade down.
Right, because as much as I think Travis Hunter would be a great player here, you're adding to your strength when you have a whole lot of weaknesses around this roster as well.
Absolutely.
One of the positions that doesn't get talked about a lot, because there's not really a hole there, but also there's not really a player there, is tight end. And I want to talk about tight end coming up next. What do the Titans do there? Because there's a whole lot of question marks with Chig and Wiley and others. We'll talk about that coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, hour number 3 on this Fireball Hot Take Friday. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport sitting in for Jared Stillman once again today. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Talking about different position groups that the Titans may need to address in the offseason, and one that hasn't really been talked about a lot is tight end. The Titans right now have a trio of tight ends getting a decent amount of work. Chig Okonkwo, Nick Vannett, and Josh Wiley. David Martin Robinson also on the roster there. But it's a position that's kind of fallen into a black hole for the Titans since Jonnu Smith left a few years ago. They haven't really been able to get anybody to be a consistent force there. Chig's had his moments. His rookie year was great, actually, but hasn't really lived up to that hype since then. Josh Wiley's had his moments. But this is a position that, in terms of positional value, doesn't really stand out when compared to wide receiver and edge rusher and right tackle. But it's a spot the Titans could really use an upgrade at. And in order to do that, you probably have to spend a draft pick on it, because I was looking at the free agent market. It's not great at tight end unless you want to just run it back with this group again next year.
You know, just real quick on Jonnu, he's quietly had the best year of his career.
Yeah, you see what he did in overtime the other week?
He's a beast, man. He's about the catch and run.
Yeah, and then he got the touchdown.
Yeah, he's a monster. 61, 692, both career highs. 50 or 5 touchdowns, 57-yarder was his long, but 5 touchdowns. Like, these are all career highs, man. That's what's up.
Yeah.
Chig, you know, I think the big thing with Okonkwo is consistency. He has not been consistent as a player. He did have the drop issues earlier in the year. He has managed to corral that. And, I mean, to his credit, you know, a lot of time spent on the jugs machine. I give him a lot of credit for that, identifying an area for improvement and going out and attacking it, right? But you're right. This tight end position, they have to figure it out. And I don't think, you know, I'll say I was wrong. I thought Okonkwo would be an impact player in this league. I really did. You know, you go back to what he did at Maryland and watch the usage. I thought he would be an impact player, and it just hasn't happened. The draft is probably the only way to go, but when do you address that? Right? Like, where does that fall in the hierarchy?
Among when you have such big holes in other spots that might be deemed more important, but tight end can really be a young quarterback's best friend.
Yeah,
look at Marcus's first couple of years. Delaney Walker was basically, I mean, the amount of targets that Delaney Walker got in Marcus's rookie and sophomore seasons, I bet was astronomical compared to whatever Kendall Wright and the other wide receivers were getting.
Yeah.
Having a tight end like that who can give you an option in the middle of the field and give you a safety valve is important. And Will Levis really hasn't had that in his first couple of seasons.
Yeah, it is important, and it hasn't been there. I mean, it was there, you know, on that 4th and 2. You know what I mean?
It's true.
But
he was open.
Yeah, I think it is. And just a quick interesting thing about Chig, like, we just went over the numbers for Jonnu Smith. Chig, you know, Jonnu career high, 67 receptions and counting, of course.
Yeah.
Chig's career high last year, 54. You know, 691 to 528. I always thought there were similarities between the two, but the bottom line is Okonkwo has not been good enough. And there's a lot that goes into it. I think the consistency has been a huge thing. But like you said, you know, having that blanket, you know, has been huge. And it's crazy you mentioned Delaney. Like, I remember covering him in San Francisco, converted receiver,
wearing 46.
Yeah, returning. And I remember when I came here, and that's one of the first things I said. I said, I'm glad they got you a better looking number, because, you know, you wearing that 46 returning kicks it was just disgusting. He just busted out laughing, man. So you are right, though, that security blanket is something that you have to have as a quarterback. And I think that relationship is something that Levis and like, they have to develop that somehow, and it just hasn't happened to this point.
Chig Okonkwo had a great rookie season. I mean, the play that stands out to me always looking back at his first year was the Chiefs one, where he almost went 75 yards for a touchdown on just a little screen pass and outrunning everybody.
Look what he did in Houston.
Like, similar thing.
Get somewhere shoes. He had them on, man.
It just hasn't been consistent enough.
Yeah.
Maybe it's too simplistic, but I think back to the preseason game before last season. I believe it was the Vikings game where he had 2 pretty bad drops early on. And I don't know, it felt like the confidence might have gone away after that. I know it's a preseason game, but I still look at that as kind of the turning point for me when throughout preseason training camp, I felt like we were getting a lot of good reports from Chigakonkwo of, hey, he's making plays. Him and Ryan Tannehill had a pretty good rapport. And then after that game, things just kind of didn't go up anymore. It kind of just stayed where it was.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You got to continue to trend up, because if not, you're going to find yourself in trouble. You're going to find yourself out of the league.
Josh Wiley, too, similarly, there are plays where you're like, oh, that's a guy who could make an impact at tight end, but it's just not consistent enough. It doesn't happen as much as you'd like it to. And it has to be tough for Will Levis when the tight end position kind of can just disappear from the game at times for this Titans offense.
It can. But see, here's the thing also that you got to look at. Tyler Boyd is, in essence, your tight end, right? Like, he's working a lot of those tight end routes, the middle of the field stuff, the short yardage stuff, the third round stuff. So it does kind of cancel out. I don't think that they need to do anything at tight end. I think you keep this group that you have. I think it's good enough in the grand picture thing. But Tyler Boyd is probably going to move on. So you better get yourself somebody that could be a presence in the slot that will work the middle of the field. Can you go with an NWI and use him kind of in that Marcus Colston power slot type of?
Yeah,
possibly. Or like, do you look at a Ted McMillan, and draft him and use him a lot of because their skill sets are similar, he and T. Higgins. The way they attack the football,
right?
Like, they're basketball players, and I've seen the Drake London comparison
too,
which it all applies. But now you work that in the slot, and that kind of alleviates the need for a high impact tight end.
Quickly, just to go on a quick tangent, the Biletnikoff Award awarded to Travis Hunter. Do you think that was the right call, or do you think Ted McMillan should have won it?
I get it. I think Ted should.
That's what I think too.
I think Ted McMillan should win.
I think a little bit of reputation kind of went into that, because it is a voted upon award. There's no formula that goes into it. It's not like they just take the nation's leader in receptions and yards and all that. But Ted McMillan, it feels like he kind of slides under the radar. Travis Hunter is obviously in all the headlines, so that might have played into it. But I think you're right. I think the Titans need somebody in the middle of the field, and wide receiver is probably the easier way to go about it, because tight ends typically aren't worthy of a top 10 pick. And I mean, even Brock Bowers, who a lot of people were saying he's straight to the Hall of Fame, he went 13th.
Yeah.
Kyle Pitts went 4th.
And it goes back to what we said, like, where do you draft it? And I think just in the grand scheme of things, I don't feel tight end, like, you get it. I don't think that makes the difference that getting a right tackle would make.
Right.
I don't think that makes the difference that, getting a ball hawking safety that turns the football over would make. Getting a pass rusher, a closer. Hey, look, man, it's third and 9. Go ahead and cancel Christmas, because my guy right here about to come in here and get the sack. You know what I mean? That's what you need more than tight end.
Right. You have only a limited amount of resources, and if let's say you use your second round pick, if Colston Loveland, who actually just declared for the draft out of Michigan, let's say he's sitting there early in the second round, you take him. Maybe you picked an edge rusher in the first round. Well, you still don't have another wide receiver. You still don't have a right tackle.
Yeah.
And maybe the only way you can address that in the draft is if you trade it back and picked up a bunch of other picks. But it does feel like you kind of have to run back with these guys. Maybe you add a depth signing. I was looking at the free agent market earlier today. Tyler Conklin from the Jets is a free agent. Jawan Johnson.
Just leave it as is. Like, we're not even going to waste that, do that exercise.
Right.
I think if you just go with what you have now. And here's the thing. I think David Martin Robinson could be a playmaker, so what about finding some of those plays for him that you did in training camp or in the preseason? Because he popped up. Like, this is a guy, undrafted free agent, landed a roster spot.
That's a good point. And I wanted to ask you about that. Why have we not seen him at all? He was only active for the first time on Sunday, right? He's been inactive all year long. He was him and Bryce Oliver were probably the two that stood out the most in preseason once the backups got
Bryce
in.
was making a play. He was making a play every day.
He had the 2 touchdowns against the Saints, and DMR, I think he led the team in receptions,
He had
at
a
least
couple
2
nice
out of the
catches
3.
and
Like,
runs. But even like in practice, like they were showing up.
Yeah.
Both of those guys were showing up almost daily.
I'd love to see DMR get a couple of the snaps from Chig or Wiley. Vanette, I think, plays a different role. He's not really out there to catch passes. He'll catch a few here and there, but he's not the playmaking tight end. He's kind of your third guy. I'd love to see DMR get some run here in the last month of the season. Just see what you got against an actual NFL defense and see what he can do. He's undrafted out of Temple, so doesn't really have a ton of experience playing the highest level of competition. What's the harm in giving him 10, 15 snaps a game?
Yeah, give us and call plays for him.
Yeah.
Let him wham into Trey Hendrickson and release to the flat and catch the ball and outrun the one of the linebackers. Like, see if he could do that. Give him those shots.
Because again, if we're looking at the resources that you have, you're probably not going to find a tight end who's going to immediately be above Chig and above Wiley. Maybe DMR with some development can get on that level with those guys and maybe be a playmaker for you next season.
Yeah.
That's going to be something to look at over these last couple of weeks if DMR continues to be active. Again, he was a scratch throughout the first 3 months of the season. Finally was on the game day roster last week. We'll have to see Sunday morning if he gets the call once again. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We love to hear from you on our text or phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. It's bowl season, and the Game Nashville Sports Network is your home for college football bowl games and the college football playoffs presented by Twin Peaks and Perman Tractor and Equipment. Tomorrow, tune in for the Cricket Celebration Bowl as Jackson State takes on South Carolina State on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Kickoff set for 11 a.m. For a list of games carried on the Game Nashville Sports Network, visit thegamenashville.com/bowl games. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport, and for Jared Stillman today. We'll keep talking Titans on the other side here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. 1025 The Game and Cromwell Media have teamed up with the Nashville Predators for Coats for Kids, benefiting the Boys and Girls Club of Middle Tennessee. Starting on Monday, you can donate new or slightly used coats at the Game Studio and at the Fordyce Centers in Antioch, Bellevue, and Clarksville. Also on Friday, December 20th, the game will be at the Fordyce Center in Bellevue from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., taking donations, giving away swag, and tickets to an upcoming Preds game. Coat donations will also be accepted at the Preds home game at Bridgestone Arena on Saturday, December 21st. For more information, visit thegamenashville.com/coach. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Talking Titans here in this 4 o'clock hour. Just went through some of the options at the tight end position. We're seeing in the YouTube chat, and this has been a topic that I think a lot of people have talked about. I heard on the midday show today with Adam, Willie, and D-Mace. TD, Sam Darnold. I think I saw the betting odds came out for his next team, and the Titans were up there towards the top. It makes almost no sense for the Titans to sign Sam Darnold to a long-term contract this offseason.
No.
As much as I think Sam Darnold is a better quarterback than he was given credit for during his time with New York and with Carolina, you'd have to sign him to about a $150 million deal in the offseason, which is just not worth it for what Sam Darnold is.
Yeah, it's not worth it. See, here's the thing, right? If you take Sam Darnold and put him on this team, I don't think they're a playoff team. I think they're better. They're better. Like Sam Darnold as your quarterback is better than Levis right now as your
Agreed.
quarterback. But is it better enough to where you're $35 million more? No. If you're spending $40 to $45 million on a quarterback, he has to be a guy. And the Giants experienced this because they gave mediocrity $40+ million. Now, I'm sorry, Sam Darnold is still mediocre to me. I know he's having a solid year. He's still mediocre to me, right? Now, if you give a guy that's not going to elevate everyone else that much money, you're asking your roster to fail.
Everybody always says that the best advantage an NFL team can have is having a good quarterback on a rookie contract and not having to pay them $40 million. It feels stupid to go pay a quarterback who has had one good year in his entire career, one year where he is in the top half of NFL quarterbacks, and pay him like he's Trevor Lawrence.
We've seen this movie before your time. You weren't born at the time. Rob Johnson, right? He had an awesome year, signed a contract, and he was up out of there real soon. Awesome year actually with Jacksonville. He filled in. Right, awesome. I'm not even going to say year, maybe a 5-6 game stretch. The Bills signed him. Yeah, Doug Flutie was the starter in like a little over a season. Matt Flynn
in Seattle. Russell Wilson took his job real quick.
Said, let me get that.
How about Nick Foles in Jacksonville?
Nick Foles in Jacksonville. Like, you got to be careful. And I know in the chat they mentioned Baker Mayfield. Well, listen, Baker Mayfield was the number 1 overall pick who had a couple solid years in Cleveland for the bottom fella.
Took them to the playoffs.
You know what I mean? So it's not like it's not the same type of reclamation project.
Right. And I can't get behind that when Levis hasn't been a complete disaster and you're going to be picking towards the top of the draft this year. I think you have better options out there than Darnold. If you had to rank the options the Titans have between keeping Levis, drafting a quarterback, getting a one-year journeyman like Daniel Jones, Andy Dalton, somebody like that, and Sam Darnold, I think Sam Darnold would be my last option.
Can we just shut this down right now?
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
All right, no, listen. This is how we're going to shut it down. Okay? He's already in the building at Eden Prairie, Minnesota. He's in the building. Minneapolis, rather. He's in the building.
Yeah.
They're not going to keep him. What more evidence do you need than that?
That is a very good point. If they let him go, doesn't that kind of show you something?
Let him go.
They probably should let him go. I'm wondering if maybe they talk themselves into signing him to a long-term deal and trading JJ McCarthy. It would be a tough look for that front office to trade away the quarterback that you just spent a top 15 pick on. But I think it would look worse if they let Darnold walk and JJ McCarthy is just a disaster next year.
Yeah, it wouldn't look good. But I just know from talking to Kevin Seifert, who is the ESPN Nation Vikings reporter, he said that it is highly, highly unlikely that Darnold is back. And they believe that J.J. McCarthy is going to be their guy.
If they're letting him, somebody's going to give Sam Darnold that contract, and it's going to set their franchise back 2 or 3 years. I'm trying to think of who it's going to be. It'll end up being a team like the Titans who isn't picking first or second this year.
So, all right.
But doesn't have a long-term answer. So
watch the Raiders or somebody do it.
The Raiders and Giants might be picking high enough that they won't have to worry about it. It could be a team.
New England doesn't need a quarterback. Carolina, depends on what they do with Bryce Young.
Yeah, I think they keep
it. Won't be the Jets.
Jacksonville.
No, of course not the Jets. He already crapped the bed.
Lawrence. Maybe the Jets.
Nah, they're not gonna bring him back. Ain't no way. He already dropped the bomb there.
Yeah, that's true.
It won't be Cleveland. I don't think so, because they've already made a big mistake on signing a quarterback to a long-term.
Maybe
deal.
New Orleans makes a move from Carr.
Yeah,
they don't really have anybody behind him.
Yeah, and I don't think New Orleans wants to start over completely there. Maybe that's a move.
I wonder if the Giants would. And I know he was in New York already, but I wonder if the Giants would.
What if Indianapolis signed him?
That would be crazy considering. I don't think he has many suitors.
I understand now, looking at this draft order, why the Titans are favored in the betting odds, because the Titans kind of fit the mold of a team that probably won't be in position to draft Shedeur Sanders, but might need a quarterback next year.
But don't have a legit option as their young guy who they want to start.
Yeah, I think Titans, Giants. Well, no, Titans. I think Titans, Saints. Those are. Where are the odds? What we looking at?
Sam Darnold next team odds.
I heard it was the last odds that I saw that DVD and Vingan brought up today. The number one odds it was from the 33rd team. I can't remember where he got the odds. Bovada maybe. Vikings, of course, were the first for him to return, and the Titans were second.
Okay, so if he leaves the building,
the Titans.
Vegas believes that the Titans are the favorite.
Yeah.
But I think those markets are they're just sucker bets. They're just trying to get people to put money on stuff that they have no idea about either. But the odds are better than not that people are going to lose. Jackson on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says Saints too. I could see that. Yeah. I could see the Saints, but it would be very similar to the Derek Carr move, which hasn't worked out either. You're signing a guy who another team let walk out of the building to a long-term deal when you're not really sure that he's ever going to be the guy to push you over the top.
Yeah, I don't know that he gets that big money, but then the question is, okay, if it's a lower cost deal, do you do it? No.
I wonder how much this playoff run will matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if Darnold was to win a playoff game or two, I doubt he wins 2, but let's say he wins 1. I think somebody will give him a significant deal. I don't know who it's going to be. Somebody will, but the market value on Spot Track might be a little inflated because you do have to have people bidding on him. And I just don't see there. It's not like there's going to be 8 or 9 different teams fighting for Sam Darnold services. It's probably going to be 2 or 3 that have any interest whatsoever.
And the Vikings showed us this movie before with Case Keenum.
Yeah.
And they turn around and sign Kirk Cousins. So they've experienced a really good run with a quarterback that, it's like, wow, I didn't think that they would do that. And they moved on. So
they let the Broncos.
Yeah. And I want to say that was that post Spillman? I don't know if that was post.
No, because that was that was during Spielman.
Yeah.
Spielman let him walk.
Savior Spielman. Savior Spillman, man. He's the guy. Bring him in. He's going to championship.
See, and I wouldn't mind bringing in a guy like Rick Spielman in an advisory role or something like that. Bring in an older, more experienced guy, but he doesn't have to be the GM.
And my thing is this, like, I think Spillman is like, he has a solid body of work, but when you mention him and say like he's the savior and he would just come in and fix everything, I can't get down with that. Like, that's one I can't get down with. Now, it'd be different if you were talking about like Brandon Beane coming in. I'd be like, yeah, that's a move that should be made.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I just don't see that as a viable.
It doesn't move the needle for me all that
No.
much. Could it happen? Sure. I think it's unlikely. I think most GM openings are going to go to directors of NFL scouting and assistant GMs and those type of guys who are making their way up, instead of guy like Rick Spielman, who's on a podcast now talking about this stuff. Like, I'm sure he's very smart, but he also isn't working in an NFL building right now and hasn't been for a couple of years. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to chime in. See some texts about possible Sam Darnold landing spots in our text line as well. We'll get to some of those. We're also going to look around the NFL. Big weekend this week. A couple of possible Super Bowl previews between Buffalo and Detroit, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. We'll talk about that coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063, The Game. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Been a fun week because Jared's been out the last couple of days. Talking some Titans throughout the first part of the show. We're going to get back to the Titans in our final hour, but looking around here, a big weekend across the NFL. Playoff races in full swing and two big matchups, both at 3:25 on Sunday. Bills, Lions, Steelers, Eagles. 10-win teams all across the board there. Possible Super Bowl previews. I think Bills, Lions would be the one that more fits that billing. But, Steelers, Eagles, Keystone State, up in your territory up there, TD. That's going to be a great game as well. George Pickens was ruled out today, so he won't be up there in that game. But going to see a lot of stars on the field up there as well as those two teams battle it out.
Yeah, a whole lot of stars. I think watching that game, the matchup, right, between Joey Porter Jr. and AJ is going to be fun to watch. And I'm really curious because obviously you have the back and forth and the things that were said about the relationship with AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts. And I love my guy Freddie Mitchell, man. That's my dog, man. He and T.O., they did a live together, and Freddie was like, Donovan hated you when he threw you the ball, and it's right. So I think you look at this game, I'm really curious what they're going to do, like if they're going to dial up a lot of targets to A.J. Brown, because I think it is about time they really showcase a compliment to Saquon Barkley. I think Barkley in the rushing attack should be the focal point, but you got to have some good side dishes to that main course.
Yeah, and you've got plenty of options up there. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. And the whole A.J. Brown saga is weird just because Brown and Hurts, they were best friends.
Yeah.
Like before the trade happened.
That's his daughter's godfather.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
They were friends through the draft process and while AJ was here and then the trade, I think
Jalen Hurts was at AJ's draft party.
Right.
Yeah.
Like these guys have been friends for a long time. It is strange to hear Brandon Graham go on the radio and say something's changed there in terms of their relationship. I know that you have to battle through that in terms of your job. Like you can't just not look AJ Brown's way because you're fighting with him.
Exactly.
But it has to be tough for those guys who clearly had chemistry when he first got there and had back-to-back huge years and now has fallen into the background of that offense with Saquon coming and, of course, the falling out that they've had.
Yeah, and I think that's the real interesting part of it is just like, how is this going to work? How are they going to be able to be professionals and put anything aside and go out there and produce? And really, this Eagles team, like, they won last week. They won the game. I know Xavier Legette, who coincidentally to me was AJ Part 2. I know he dropped the ball, didn't secure it through contact, but they won the game, But I'm looking forward to watching this game because no one's really – this Eagles defense is outstanding. Quinyon Mitchell, I personally think that's the defensive rookie of the year.
Quinyanamo Bay, the shirts that they're wearing out there instead of Revis Island. I like it.
Yeah.
I do think the Steelers are being slept on, though. For a team with that record, the Steelers and Vikings both are just quietly 10-win teams.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Tomlin, just another masterclass of coaching. They move on from Kenny Pickett, bring in two guys who were kind of thrown out with the trash from their own spots, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. Bears and Broncos both said we're done. And doesn't matter who's been starting in there. Russell's been great lately, but even early in the season, Justin Fields looked great. Mike Tomlin has turned a team that I don't think anyone really was thinking about as an AFC contender at the beginning of the year into one.
Yeah, no, he's definitely just stayed the course. And I think that's a great example of how you just believe in your coach. And I know Brian Callahan still has a lot to do. Rand Carthon, they have a lot to do to earn the right of hey, I believe in them. They have a lot to do because it hasn't been good enough. But I think you look at Mike Tomlin, that's a good example of an organization that's just stable enough to say, hey, you know what? We ID'd you as our guy, and we're just going to ride with you and make it work. And I think what he's done this year is just it is coach of the year material, to be honest with you.
And he may not win it just because people have gotten so used to Mike Tomlin.
Yeah.
to not have a losing season in what 20 years
It-
or close to
He
20.
hasn't existed as a head coach with the losing season.
It's unbelievable.
And the storms that they've weathered,
right?
You know, the Le'Veon Bell, the Antonio Brown, like it's been, and even recently with Pickens, like it's a ride.
Yeah, there's plenty of controversy that has been around the Steelers since he's gotten there. It doesn't. It's not like they've been the Patriots where steady. You don't really hear what's going on behind closed doors. Like Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell both had very public departures from that team.
Yeah.
Le'Veon Bell sitting out an entire year because he didn't get a new contract. Antonio Brown begging for a trade, and, then refusing to go to Buffalo. Finally went to Las Vegas. He never played a snap for the Raiders.
I don't think he did.
No, he didn't
because he was calling Mike. What's my boy's name, man? Oh man, from NFL Network.
Oh, Mike Mayock.
Mike Mayock was calling him name.
Yeah. Then went to the Patriots, and then everybody knows how things ended from there. Went to the Bucs. The Steelers have had their fair share of characters, and the NFL is built for you not to be able to be good every single year.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get a good draft pick. There's a salary cap, but Mike Tomlin just finds a way, and they're winning the AFC North right now, which at the beginning of the year, I think everyone would have said it's a 2-team race between the Ravens and Bengals, and Mike Tomlin just right there. And are they 2 games up on the Ravens now?
I believe it's 2.
I think they're 2
and
games
they have
up.
a win over the Ravens,
right?
If I'm not mistaken.
So, man, Mike Tomlin just doing a great job over there in Pittsburgh. 615-737-1025. If you want to chime in, we're looking around a great slate of NFL games this weekend. We'll get more into the Bills and Lions coming up next, up in Detroit. Buffalo and Detroit, 2 of the teams that possibly could be playing for Lombardi in New Orleans later on this season. We'll get into that coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They take great care of my home, and I am promising you they will do the exact same for you. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, and they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems or a new whole home generator. Get $250 Visa gift card when you buy a new tankless water heater. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today by visiting happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. That's Hiller. Call the Happy Fish Truck today.
Wrapping up hour number 3 here on Stillman and Company on this Fireball Hot Take Friday. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman once again here on Stillman and Company. If you want to chime in, you can on our text or phone line, 615-737-1025. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We're looking around a great slate of NFL games this weekend. Just talked a little bit about Eagles and Steelers, cross-state battle between the 10-3 Steelers and the 11-2 Philadelphia Eagles. But maybe the biggest game of the weekend is going to be in Detroit. Buffalo and the Lions facing off. I would love if this was a Super Bowl preview, TD. I think that would be a fun, refreshing Super Bowl where you don't have the same old teams. You get to see two fan bases who have been tortured for a long time get a chance to win their first championship.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of. Two very well-deserving franchises, finally getting a chance to win a Super Bowl. It's funny. My mom and I, we used to watch Bills games all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And, I wasn't a Bills fan, so to speak. You know what? I'll say I was a Bills fan. Like, they weren't my number one team, but I had a little starter jacket with the Bills on it. And I remember those years when they lost, and I hated to see them lose those 4 straight Super Bowls. And I was hurt. And again, that's not even my team. I couldn't imagine what
4 in a row is
Bills fans, how had they felt, man. That's so the franchise deserves it. And then I will tell you, being in Detroit, man, and hanging out with my guy Eric Woodyard and my other homie who was he's their game day experience host. And that city, they love their Lions, and they're just dying for a championship. It will go crazy out there.
They're starved for good sports up there in Detroit. And the Bills, you mentioned the 4 Super Bowls in a row to lose. I know it was a long time ago, but then they had nearly 20 years, maybe over 20 years without going to the playoffs until Tyrod took them back in that 2017 season. But they deserve to make a run, and I think that would just be a fun Super Bowl. That's one that America could get behind, is Bills and Lions. Lions seems like it could be feasible. There are a lot of good teams in the NFC, but the Lions have been kind of head and shoulders at the top in the NFC. The AFC, a little bit tougher to sort through with the Bills, obviously, but the Chiefs, Ravens are a team that no one is going to want to face with Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson when January rolls around. We mentioned the Steelers are in there as well. The Chargers with Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert. There is a lot of teams that could be making a run to the Super Bowl. But, of course, it always starts with Kansas City.
Yeah.
Do we think that the Chiefs can continue their magic, making their deal with the devil to get themselves into the Super Bowl again this year?
Somehow they've just continued to find a way. And I think when you look at that, yes, I think you should believe it, because until you're proven otherwise, and that guy at 15, man, Patty Mahomes,
just finds a way.
Finds a way, man. And it's just, and anytime I feel like this, anytime you have he and Travis Kelce, because Travis Kelce is such a saucy route runner, man. He puts a little, that dude's going to find a way to get open and make a play for you. So I think you have those two together, you always have the advantage. It's in your favor. And
adding DeAndre Hopkins to the mix there gives them the experienced wide receiver that they didn't have coming into the season. Oh, and Hollywood Brown, they just opened his window to return.
Yep. So the weapons it's coming in.
What a late season addition that would be for Andy Reid to add to his repertoire along with Xavier Worthy.
Yeah,
it's crazy just looking back that as long as the Chiefs don't slip up and lose a couple of games here down the stretch, they will be in position to host the AFC Championship game again. Last year they didn't, but they won it. They went to Baltimore and won it. The last time the Chiefs weren't in an AFC Championship was Jaguars Patriots with Blake Bortles starting at quarterback.
Crazy. I remember doing because that was Eagles Vikings, and I remember with Dan Orlovsky, NBC Sports Philly, we were doing the previews. That's a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. That is the last time that Patrick Mahomes wasn't in the AFC Championship game. In fact, the last team to beat the Chiefs before the AFC Championship game was
The Bills?
the Tennessee Titans.
Oh, to beat them before the
AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
It was the Marcus Mariota pass to himself. That is
Yep,
the last time that the Chiefs fell before the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes is otherworldly.
Yeah.
Especially in the playoffs. And you look at the bracket right now, maybe we get a Ravens-Chiefs divisional game, which would not be easy. And then it would probably be Buffalo in the AFC Championship game if things went chalk from there on out. That's not an easy path to the Super Bowl for the Chiefs. But like you said, until somebody stops them, I have a hard time picking against them.
Yeah, and they have to really tumble. Look at their schedule because they have 2 games over the Bills. Of course, if they end up with the same record, the Bills, because the Bills were the only team to beat them this year. That's what I thought you were referencing.
Right. Yeah.
Before this upcoming AFC Championship game. But so you got the Browns, Texans, Steelers, Broncos. It's no easy walk. No easy walk. I mean, the Browns, their defense is still legit. The Texans are the Texans. Pittsburgh and Denver. Hey, that's going to be this could get nice. I think they end up with home field advantage, but I mean, let's see what the Bills.
Well, yeah, the Bills do have the tiebreaker because they have beaten them.
Yeah, no, we established that, but I'm saying let's see what their schedule is.
Yeah, yes.
That's something to look at. Obviously, this game against the Lions is going to be tough, but you got Lions, Patriots, Jets, Patriots.
So Bills probably going to win their last 3 games.
Yeah.
Patriots and Jets, I don't think are going to put up too much of a fight. So let's say the Bills lose on Sunday against Detroit. You're 13-4. That would mean the Chiefs would have to go 1-3 for them to not get home field advantage. Feels pretty safe to guess that the Chiefs are going to be that the road to the Super Bowl in the AFC is going to run through Arrowhead again.
Yep. Hey, it is what it is, man.
If you don't like it,
beat it.
Beat them. That's the only way to do it. But
or in Hopkins' case, join them.
See, and that is one of the only reasons I would be somewhat happy if the Chiefs won the Super Bowl. I'm not rooting for it because it's like Brady and the Patriots. They've had their Super Bowls. Let them feel some pain for a little bit here. But I would love to see DeAndre Hopkins get to win a Super Bowl. I think that would be cool for him.
I listen. It'd be cool if they get to this. Well, no, he's not going to have 60% of snaps. Honestly, it's sentimental. I want to see Ravens and Eagles. Because my mom, she loved Derrick Henry,
right?
Like loved him, and it was to the point like she'll text me before a game. I hope my boy Derrick doesn't get hurt. And I remember showing Derrick these text messages, and he would just crack up. You know what I mean? So you got that, and obviously her being an Eagles fan,
yeah,
I would love to see the Eagles win a championship in the year that she passed.
That would be
so. That would be good for me. But
yes.
I mean, yeah, I also would love to see Jalen Hurts and AJ Brown. Like I would love to see them get a title. And I still have a lot of guys that I'm really cool with on that team. Lane Johnson. There's a bunch of guys. You know what I mean? Brandon Graham. So it would be cool to see them win it.
It is. You look at these teams at the top of the AFC, the NFC. You're most likely going to see at least one former Titan win a Super Bowl this year. The Bills. Is Daquan Jones still with the Bills?
Daquan is still with
the Bills.
You know who else is with the Bills? You never would have thought of. So he came up and said, "What's up, man?" Running back.
Yes. Darrington Evans.
Yeah.
Yes. You told me Darrington Evans is with the Bills. Lions have Khalif Raymond.
Yeah.
Is Vildor still there too?
Yeah, Vildor is there. Every time I say the name Vildor, I picture Terry McCormick because he would always have this thing because he said Vildor sounds like a super villain in a movie. And he always do like this little thing like this and be like Vildor. It cracks me up. Terry's funny, man.
And then the obvious ones we just mentioned, like Hopkins with the Chiefs, AJ with the Eagles, and Derek with the Ravens. Derek would be most Titans fans. I think you could never root for the Ravens to win a Super Bowl, but at the very least, you could live with the fact that Derrick Henry got what he wanted when he left. It was a successful mission for Derrick Henry leaving Nashville to go chase a championship. Going to be a fun final month of the season and into the playoffs. Although I think this, I I think this season has been a little underwhelming. And there was a texter who mentioned this. It might have been Adam in Portland earlier who said that the NFL hasn't been as great this year. Maybe it's just because the Titans have been uncompetitive, but I do think we're going to have a good playoff this year because there isn't really a team that is so dominant that you don't think there's a chance they lose. Like,
Yeah.
I think we're going to get great games from the divisional round on as we find a champion.
No, absolutely.
And this weekend, we're going to see some previews of maybe who is standing out, two AFC, NFC battles, cross conference with Eagles, Steelers, and Bills, Lions. So should be a fun weekend. Both those games are on at the same time, though. So you'll have to find a way. Maybe it's a multi-screen type of afternoon on Sunday. We'll see if that's what it ends up being. Titans will face the Bengals on Sunday, hoping to avoid another 3-game losing streak. We are going to get back into that game coming up next. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Fireball Hot Take Friday is presented by Fireball Cinema Whiskey. That's right. It's the weekend. It means it's time to celebrate. It means it's time to rejoice. Whether you're hanging out with your friends or whatever it may be, there's no better time to enjoy Fireball Whiskey than right now. That's right. Be sure to enjoy ice cold Fireball Whiskey, either in the shot form or grab yourself a bottle. That's Fireball Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
Final hour on this Friday. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3. The Game. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Been a fun show so far. We'll wrap it up in this last hour, getting you ready for Titans and Bengals coming up on Sunday from Nissan Stadium. We're broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We'd love to hear from you as well. If you want to text or call us, 615-737-1025 is our phone number, and our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Just talked about what's going to be a fun week in the NFL. A couple of big games. Maybe not one of the bigger games on the schedule, Titans and Bengals on Sunday, although you would think it would have to be better than last week's game against the Jaguars, the lowest scoring game of the season so far. And TD, before we get into this year's matchup, I kind of wanted to look back. A very interesting history over the last few years between the Titans and Bengals. These two teams have played every year since Joe Burrow got into the league. Once in the postseason, of course, the game that shall not be spoken of among Titans fans. But Joe Burrow has, for the most part, had a lot of success against this Titans team. Even in his rookie year when the Bengals weren't very good, we just went through Zach Taylor's first 2 years. They were 6-25. Burrow kind of tore apart the Titans as a rookie en route to a big win out in Cincinnati. Of course, the playoff win. Then 2 years ago, here in Nashville, that was a game where the Titans had an opportunity to win it late. Was that the first game of the 7-game losing streak?
I believe it was. I want to say it was.
I think you're right. I think it was Packers on the Thursday night was the last win to get to 7-3.
Yeah, that was the last one.
And then 10 days later, they were back in Nashville and lost to the Bengals, and that was loss number 1 of 7 in a row.
Yeah, I want to say that.
I think that is
20-16, November 27th.
That is correct.
Yep. And the that game, I was there for that one, and the Bengals were going in to kick a go-ahead field goal, or maybe it wasn't go-ahead. It might have been to extend their lead. Titans hit the snapper, get called for a personal foul. Bengals run the clock down and win the game. That one was a tough one, and obviously led to a lot of. It kind of was the first domino to fall for what we've seen over the past few years.
Yeah.
But then last year, Joe Burrow comes in here to Nashville again, and the Titans dominate them 27-3. One of their few wins last season. Strange that they were able to get that one, but for the most part, Joe Burrow and this Bengals team have kind of had the Titans number since he's come into the league.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, it was very strange. But I think, you look at this history, the one that stands out to me is that AFC divisional game, man. Like, that's the one that stands out to me. And it's I remember talking to Wuze. We talked to him yesterday about this, and he was like, man, first thing I thought of walking off the field was, whew, that was a relief, because he was like, if you guys remember, AJ had a pretty good game against me. You know what I mean? And that one though, just I'll never forget the silence. I heard that silence one other time, but that silence that I heard was matched with euphoria. And that was when Kyle Rudolph scored the touchdown for the Vikings.
Right.
Against the Eagles in
Yeah.
that NFC championship. Like, it was, you couldn't hear it. You could, it was quiet. But then that pick six, Patrick Robinson,
Right.
Case Keenum, Chris Long but anyhow, that game when Money hit that field goal and it was over, like that silence was just amazing.
Yeah, I was sitting on my couch in college. I did not watch the ball go through. I saw it off his foot, knew it was good, and I walked away from the TV. I was like, nope, I'm done. That game, I think every time, and I believe Will Compton and Taylor Lewan said this, they did their depression pod after. I think they both said that no one on that sideline, and I'm sure it was the same feeling among all the fans in the stadium and all Titans fans watching, Titans fans and players didn't think they were going to lose that game until that field goal went through. You were one win away from hosting the AFC Championship game, and you couldn't get it done. And I know Tannehill gets a lot of flack for that loss because the 3 picks. But he also made an unbelievable throw to A.J. Brown to tie the game
Yeah, in the corner of that
in the
end zone.
corner of the end zone. And you also have to look at some of the play calling.
And even the play design. You know, that first interception, why do you not have any type of backside vertical route? Of
Right.
course, the safety is going to sit on the 2 routes on his left side, and you had nothing on the backside. So, yeah, I mean, I don't put that loss just on Tannehill,
No.
man. That's a collective thing where they just together. I mean, look, Chase caught the 19-yarder to get in position.
Right after
You
the
know what I
third
mean?
pick,
Yeah.
which bounced off Nick Westbrook-Akine's hands. Was not an easy catch. He was getting hit as he tried to catch it. The second one is the one that stands out to me because Deontay Foreman had just run for about 50 yards the play before, and it made it even worse when the mic'd up for Mike Hilton came out. They ran the screenplay on the first drive or the second drive of the game because the first play was a pick. On the second drive of the game, they ran that screenplay and Hilton almost got it. And he on the sideline, he's telling his teammates, if they run that again, I'm picking it off.
Yeah.
And they ran it again and he picked it off. It's always going to be a tough one for Titans fans. I think in my mind, you know, growing up a Titans fan, the Ravens game, I was young for that one in 2008. When old D Mace and the Ravens took down the number 1 seed Titans. That one was tough. I think that game in 2021, that's the closest the Titans have been to hosting an AFC championship game in 15 years, and they just couldn't get it done.
That one hurt my feelings, and I ain't even a fan, yo. I remember going to the locker room, you know, the day after or whatever, and it's just like everybody, we're all like stuck, like couldn't believe that the season was over.
Right.
You know?
And it was made worse because it wasn't like 2020 where the Titans kind of backed into the playoffs. Like they needed that.
Was the expectation.
2021, Tannehill had just thrown for 4 touchdowns against the Texans in week 17 back then. Yeah, that was before the 18th.
Including that beautiful 51-yarder to
Yes.
AJ to set. Oh, man.
Yes. So the passing offense was rolling. And, Derrick Henry coming back from injury after missing the second half of the season. And when he got announced to the crowd, everyone went crazy. The King was back. It felt like, I think most people thought the Titans were going to roll in that game. And you sacked Joe Burrow 9 times and still couldn't get the win. I know we're bringing up bad memories for Titans fans everywhere out there. That was a tough one. And really since then, yeah, the Titans started 7-3 the next year, but since then it just hasn't been right for this franchise. And it's tough to not look back at that one as the one that got away, because the Bengals went into Arrowhead the next week and beat the Chiefs. So what's to say you couldn't have beaten Kansas City in your own stadium? And then playing the Rams in the Super Bowl, I know that's bad memories for the Titans too, but that's a winnable game. The Bengals were 3 points short.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Wow.
It's tough. Lots of history between the Bengals and Titans over the last couple of years, and not a lot of good history, but the Titans do have the last one. Beat them 27-3. I believe that was week 4 last year, where Burrow, I think he was banged up a little bit coming into that one, and the Titans really left no doubt from the beginning in that win. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Adam in Portland on our text line, looking back at that 08 Ravens loss, he says they cheated us, twisted Chris Johnson's ankle in the pile. Also in that game, there was the delay of game that wasn't called that led to the game-winning field goal for the Ravens. You probably didn't follow the Titans as closely back then, of course, but I still remember it was Flacco. You could see the play clock on the screen hit 0. There were 2 more seconds that came before Flacco took the snap, hit Todd Heap down the seam for about 30 yards and set up the game-winning field goal. That one, I know that one hurts for Titans fans as well. We will get away from the sad history and look forward to Sunday's game and see what the Titans could possibly do to keep this one close with Cincinnati on Sunday. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport sitting in for Jared Stillman today on this Fireball Hot Take Friday on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
Facing a guy like Hendrickson, I mean, how aware do you have to be, where he lines up, and what kind of emphasis will it be knowing he's hunting you up, get the ball up quickly and on target?
Yeah, no, he's a grinder, leading the league in sacks. You know that. Hubbard on the other side, no slouch either. So we got to be ready on what they're going to have for us up front, the different packages, and how they're going to try to get him in their best rush positions. So we're going to know where he's at all day and have a plan to handle protection. So opportunities to do good things against this defense, I think, but they do have players across the ball.
Will Levis earlier this week talking about what the Bengals defense brings, especially Trey Hendrickson, the NFL's sack leader, who will be trying to make it a long day for Will Levis on Sunday when the Bengals come to Nissan Stadium. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. TD, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. That this is not a game that we feel very confident the Titans are going to win. The Bengals have been playing good football, especially on the offensive side of the ball. And, the defense has been lackluster. But the question really is, can the Titans offense do enough to make them pay and keep this game close throughout the day?
Yeah, I think the critical part of it, I'm going to say no, but I think the critical part of having a chance is to be productive. Like, you got to score in the red zone. And I think when I'm talking about score, I'm talking about touchdown.
Right.
You're bringing a knife to a gunfight if you're kicking field goals inside after getting the ball in the red zone. You cannot do that. You have to figure out a way to score points. The good thing is this Bengals defense has not exactly been the best when it comes to stopping teams. They're winning a lot of shootouts, and I don't think the Titans have the firepower to go against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Andre Yoshivas and Joe Burrow.
Yeah, if the Bengals, which they've been doing pretty much every game, if they put up 30, it seems difficult to believe the Titans are going to be able to hang in there with that, especially with the offensive line the way it is. And you heard Will Levis talk about Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard. They can make it tough with J.C. Latham having kind of a dip the last couple games, and obviously the issues we've seen at right tackle. Not sure this one's going to be all that competitive on Sunday for the Titans, but you never know. They surprised us before. I mean, I don't think anyone really thought the Houston game was going to be all that competitive. Titans ended up winning that one on the road. So we'll have to see what happens. We'll keep talking about this game, but on our phone lines now, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, Chris wants to jump in and has a thought about the Titans. Chris, go ahead.
Titans the truth in the building. My God, TD, how you doing, good sir?
What's up, good brother? I'm doing really well. How are you? You down there in Memphis, right?
Yes, sir. That is right. That is absolutely right, Jake. Pleasure to talk to you for the first time. Down in the M-Town, we'll be up for the game. First time in about 2 years I've actually went to a game with my little brother who is a Bengals fan, so I don't know where I went wrong as the big brother.
Man, you failed. Nah.
I kind of did.
Nah, it's all good.
Two things right quick. First off, on the game, the best way we're probably going to win, our best defense is probably going to be having to have a productive offense. We're going to have to find a way to keep Joe Burrow off the field and keep the ball out of his hands as much as possible, because if you don't, he's going to make you pay. And, I mean, we got to bring some type of pass rush. Hendrickson is the problem. I wanted him over Bud Dupree a few years back when he went into free agency, but because that guy's got a motor. So it's going to be tough for us to win it, but if we can find some way, with the run game, maybe slow the game down and maybe make it a little bit boring, then, we may have a chance there. But also, I was at that Bengals game in 21. Never been more depressed in my life. My body went numb after that game was over. Like, I really could not move to leave the stadium because I was just that messed up.
Yeah.
And an honorable mention game that really messed up a lot of fans and myself. Ken Wisenhunt years, I think we were playing the Colts. Zach Brown had an interception and was running it back. If he kept straight, he has a pick six and the Titans win. He kind of tries to cut back inside, gets cut down, and the Titans don't take advantage of it. We lose by 3. So that was an honorable mention. Most fans may or may not remember, but you guys have a great show. Tighten up. That's all we know how to do.
Thanks for the call, Chris. Great to talk to you. Good thoughts from Chris there. I don't specifically remember the Colts game that he's talking about. All of those 27 losses or whatever Whisenhunt had in his 2 years kind of blend together. But there are plenty of heartbreaking losses I'm sure we could look back and point to for the Titans.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good call from Chris, though. I guess he's heading up here for the game.
That's what's up.
What do you think for crowd on Sunday, TD? I know there's the Bengals fans, at least the game I was at 2 years ago.
They travel.
They travel well. Like it's not quite Bills or Steelers or Packers or some of those other fan bases, but I think there's going to be a decent amount of orange in the stands on Sunday.
Yeah, I wrote in my story, talking about what did the Titans have left to play for, and towards the end I said pride, and I mentioned don't be surprised if you hear who they chants in the stadium on Sunday, and that's I really believe that. And I mean, look, there were Duval chants last week. Are you serious? Duval
that
chants?
shouldn't happen.
Yeah, you're gonna see a lot of orange and black in the stands, and it just kind of is what it is.
Well, Adam, Willie, and Derek were talking about this on DVD earlier. That's the kind of thing that will get ownership's attention. Yes, you want to win, but if you're looking at a stadium that's not very full and the people who are there are wearing the other team's colors, that can get ownership's attention when the fans stop coming out to some of these games.
Yeah.
It's also going to be cold and rainy, I think, on Sunday.
Is it? Oh.
I haven't I know at least
a little rainy.
It might rain.
Warmish, but rainy.
Okay, so it's at least going to warm up a little bit. Let's see. High of 56. Okay, so it won't be too cold, but maybe a little bit of rain. Yeah, I don't know. The crowd's going to be interesting to look at. I don't think it's going to be anything to inspire much confidence late in the season. Only 2 more home games to go. And the last one, the Titans will be wearing the Oilers throwbacks for the first time.
How about
this
that? Yeah,
season.
they had the helmets in the locker room a couple weeks ago, testing them out and fitting them and everything. That'd be cool, man. I always like seeing those colors. You know what I mean? It's pretty dope. You know what I mean? Maybe somebody will have the cleat version of the Jordan 11s that came out. You know what I mean? Came out today.
Oh,
they right
for
here,
those on the stream. Yeah, there you go.
You see them right here. You know what I'm saying?
Somebody's got to bust them out. Get them ready for that Week 18 game against the Texans. 615-737-1025. We're talking about the Titans and Bengals on Sunday. Titans hoping to avoid what would be their third 3-game losing streak of the year and hopefully can get their 4th victory of the year against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. If you want to chime in, text us or call us. We'd love to hear from you. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Jake Lyman and Teron Davenport sitting in for Jared Stillman today. More Titans talk on the other side here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Final half hour of show on this Friday. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Getting ready for Titans and Bengals on Sunday. Week 15 matchup at Nissan Stadium. Titans are 3-10. Bengals 5-8, just hanging on to their playoff hopes. Before we get back into the game on Sunday, let's go to our text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is the number if you want to chime in. TD, we touched on this a little bit yesterday, but haven't really dove into it. One texter wants to know what you thought of Gentry Estes' column yesterday, the open letter to Amy Adams Strong.
Yeah, no, I think it was an excellent column. I think, it was something that I feel that somebody needs to speak. They definitely have neglected their responsibility of making sure that the message is clear and giving everyone an update. Hey, look, this is the direction of the franchise, because you heard what Chad Withrow said. I mean, it seems utterless, and it does, because it's like, okay, what's the purpose? So it's always good to come out and clear the air. They didn't do it. So his story is correct. I think, he went hard.
Yes.
He went hard. And hey, I mean, somebody had to do it. And I think he did the right thing.
I think you're right. There has to be a spokesperson for this team. And right now, Brian Callahan is the one having to field all of the questions because Amy doesn't make herself available. Rand during the season says that it's not his place to speak to the media, which it's fine.
I think there's a time and place.
Right.
After the trade deadline, somebody should.
There should have been something, especially when you make the moves that they did. Last year, I understood his reasoning of, hey, like Mike Vrabel's been around Kevin Byard longer.
Yeah, no, it made complete sense.
But also, you both can speak. Like Vrabel's going to do his weekly press availabilities anyway. I don't think it hurts to speak to your fan base and speak to the media and, like you said, give them a direction of this franchise, because right now you don't get that. John Robinson, for all his faults and all of the things that went wrong in his last couple of years, he was always there when a big move got made to speak to the media. Like it felt like within 5 minutes of it being announced, we would see tweets of John Robinson will speak to the media at 2 p.m. Central Time.
I salute John Robinson for how he handled, especially the AJ thing,
right?
Because I called AJ that day. He got traded. I'm like, damn, like what happened? We talked it out a good hour, over an hour. I got all the details and I put it out there. And John, Robinson, he, hey, look, man, this is our side. And he made sure that it was known. Okay, this is what happened from our perspective. So yeah, I salute him for the transparency. And I'm not saying like Chad Brinker or Rand or Amy, I'm not saying they're hiding, but I just think somebody needs to speak. Like it would smooth things over better. Like it would earn you more what's the word? Earn you more consideration, I guess you could call it.
I look at this and we've had texters and callers compare this to the Preds. And why is Barry Trotz not being held to the same standard as Rand Carthon, where people are calling for Rand Carthon to be fired? No one's saying that about Barry Trotz. Barry comes on the station with Jared every single week and faces the music, which I'm not saying that Rand has to do that. I don't think you have to be out there consistently, but there's got to be more transparency with Rand especially. And Amy, I don't think during the season we really need to hear from Amy, but I think at the end of every year, at least Amy should come out. And even if it's in-house media where Mike Keith sits down with her, like after last year when Mike Vrabel got fired.
No, it has to be better than that.
You think it has to be better?
Yeah, I think there should be a press conference. I really do.
I think that would be ideal. I don't know if Amy would be willing to do that.
Yeah,
I think it's better
I'm
than
just saying
nothing.
what I think should happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And
That's what
I
think
agree.
should.
I think one press conference a year shouldn't be too much to ask of Amy to step up and face some questions from the media.
Mhm.
But if you're not going to get that, at the very least, she should be able to adequately tell the fan base where she sees this franchise going. And pretty much everything that she said after Mike Vrabel was let go, the promising young quarterback and the cap space and all this stuff that she was excited about. Well, you're 3-10. We'd love to see where you see this franchise now after this season has been so disappointing. And maybe we'll get that at the end of the year. And I know we'll hear from Moran towards the end of the year as well, I'm sure. But although I don't think it's necessary right now, there has to be something soon after a season that is this disappointing where we hear from somebody in charge of where this franchise intends to go moving forward.
Yeah, it's better messaging. It's definitely messaging that has to be controlled and stated clearly without a doubt. And I think they're dropping the ball by not going over this. They're dropping the ball by not redirecting you manage the expectation.
Yeah.
And I think that got a little out of hand because of us as media. And I think, the things that got out that was said from the front, oh yeah, it's I think the expectation should have been, hey, look, this is a building process. It's a process. We're building.
Right.
We're going to compete, but we're building. Make no mistake about it. We're building. And I think that's something that should have been said and really established. And I feel like I fell short of that, among other media.
Yeah. And I know Barry, when he took the job with the Predators, came out and said it might get worse before it gets better. I think maybe there should have been that kind of messaging from somebody of, hey, it's not going to be a linear, hey, we're going to go from 6-11 to 9-8, and then we're going to be back in a playoff Super Bowl contending spot in a couple of years.
Yeah.
It's not always going to go that way, but the messaging wasn't there. And I think that's something that has to change. Skylar on our text line, a question that has been asked by a lot of people, and I think we can firmly say he wants to know, is there any chance Amy sells the team after the stadium is built? This is her family's legacy.
Yeah.
That the Adams family will own this Tennessee Titans franchise for unless something happens like, Dan Snyder in Washington, where there's a dumpster fire of stuff going on behind the scenes and lawsuits and stuff. There's no way that the Adams family is willingly going to give up this franchise.
Yeah, and this whole idea of selling a team, I don't think that's.
And I don't think we're there yet.
No.
Like it's look at the Jets. The Jets haven't made the playoffs in 14 years.
But even losing, like just because they're losing, she should sell the team.
Yeah,
I'm talking about from her perspective, like
right. No, and I'm saying that the Titans don't qualify in the level of dysfunctional franchises among others, like the Jets and the Bears. They're never going to sell their teams, even though they've been living in purgatory for much longer than the Titans have.
Yeah.
I just don't see Amy Adams and that family ever even considering selling this team. So I don't think that is even remotely in the conversation. But I think there's an agreement among fans, among media, that there has to be more transparency from that group moving forward. And maybe we'll start to get it during this final month of the season and into the offseason. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. If you want to text or call, we'd love to hear from you. Last call as we wrap up here towards the end of the show. When we come back, we'll get you ready for the weekend and continue to look at this Titans and Bengals matchup coming up on Sunday at Nissan Stadium. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport filling in for Jared Stillman today. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Finishing up the show on this Fireball Hot Take Friday, Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport in for Jared Stillman to finish up the week. Been a fun couple of days here filling in the afternoons, getting ready for Titans and Bengals on Sunday. Titans looking for their 4th win of the season. Jake Lyman, Teron Davenport with you for about 10 more minutes. But if you haven't had enough of us yet, Jake and TD is coming up next. It'll be just a replay of one of the hours from today. But if you missed some of the show, you'll get a chance to listen back to that. Jake and TD presented by Soul Nashville every Friday from 6 to 7 p.m. Before we wrap up here, TD, I wanted to, because it's Bengals week, Tyler Boyd has been a guy who I think there were not high expectations, but medium-sized expectations for him coming in, a guy who's had a lot of success in Cincinnati, and a veteran guy who I think everyone thought would come in and be a pretty consistent force in this offense. Hasn't quite been that so far this season. Do we maybe see him wake up against his former team this week?
I don't know that he'll wake up against them. It really comes down to the game plan, how much they get him involved. And we talked about the importance of a tight end for a young quarterback. Well, he's a guy. Look, they're showing him on Fox here. He's a guy that works the middle of the field. And I mean, you look at this one against the Vikings. I mean, he made a move and he got a good 20 or so yards of yak. Get him the football. Give him an opportunity to make some plays. But I don't think he wouldn't be a breakout candidate. Brian Callahan is not going to force the rock to him.
Right. And it's disappointing because I think we did see him make some plays in the preseason. The Saints game kind of stands out, that one drive he had with Will Levis.
That deep out the corner route.
Like one of those players, there were a lot of them this year who there were high hopes for that just didn't actually do it when the live bullets started flying in the regular season. Probably not going to be back after this year, but
very unlikely.
One of those signings that I think universally everyone kind of agreed was the right move to make.
It made sense.
When Brian Callahan got fired, I remember on Force Company, we were talking about who's going to play the Tyler Boyd role for the Titans in Brian Callahan's offense. Who better than Tyler Boyd to come in here and be that guy? It hasn't worked out the way we would have hoped for, but again, I don't think that's something anyone would have scoffed at.
It's not. It's not a bad move. It's a good move, and I mean, it was worth doing. And this is a team, they wanted to compete, reload at the same time, and they're behind schedule.
Yeah,
they're behind schedule, at least according to what was established from the moves that they made, the direction that it would make you think the franchise is going. But there's 4 games left. Let's see what happens.
Right.
Obviously, this is not one that's likely for them to win, but I think they have a chance in the other 3.
Yeah. I mean, those divisional games are always tight. You rarely will see, and divisional games can really go any way. But yeah, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and Houston. You've already beaten Houston this year. Jacksonville, they're one of the worst teams in the league. You lost to them last week, but could definitely get them back. And who knows what you're going to get with the Colts on a week-to-week basis. So plenty of opportunities for the Titans, including Sunday against the Bengals. And make sure to follow along with TD for all the coverage over there from Nissan Stadium as the Titans face off with Cincinnati in their penultimate home game of the season. Before we get out of here, TD, kind of a weak schedule outside of the NFL, but we got Army-Navy this weekend, which I think it's one of the cooler games that you get all year, all of the pageantry around that matchup. And it's even better this year because those teams are actually really, really good. Army was the AAC champion, first conference championship in program history. Navy was in the mix for a while there. It should be a really fun one tomorrow afternoon. I hate I'm going to miss most of it because we got a game, but it's one of those games that I think everybody loves to tune into this week when there's really not much going on.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one to watch. And, that game, I remember it used to be at Vet Stadium and then at the Link. And, they moved it over to, I think it's Annapolis.
It bounces around.
Yeah, I don't know where it is. But
I think it's at the Washington Commanders Stadium.
This year?
Okay.
Commander
Stadium.
Yeah. I think they rotate
FedEx.
whatever. Northwest Stadium now.
I think so, yeah.
It's interesting because, I don't know if you guys remember a couple years ago, the fans, it was a Commanders and Titans game, or Commanders and Eagles. And Jalen Hurts was coming off the field, and the fans were leaning on the railing.
And they fell.
And it fell in. They took that out. Like, they took that section out after the Titans game. So I wonder, if there'll be a repeat. Because I remember at Vet Stadium, they were leaning on and it fell over too. So hopefully, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think they are rotating that game up like the 95 corridor. So I think they're sometimes it's at the Commander Stadium, sometimes it's M&T Bank, sometimes at the Link, and then Meadowlands, I think, gets a couple of those games too.
M&T Bank, by the way, is a beautiful stadium.
Really?
Oh, I love that place.
I've actually never been there. I considered going for the divisional round playoff game in 2019.
Against the 14-2 Ravens.
When the Titans won that game, because I grew up an hour and a half from Baltimore. So I was like, it's an opportunity to go see my team in the playoffs. I didn't end up doing it, but that's a place I want to get to.
It used to be a good place to go as media too, because it was like one of those mid-level. It's like Charlotte and like here is really good view from the press box, but they've actually taken that, moved it up into a corner, and they've made that into suites now. So I haven't seen what it is now when you go to a game there when you cover a game, but.
I have been to Camden Yards up there in Baltimore. Have you seen a game there?
Yes. Yes. I took my aunt there a long time ago. We went to see Orioles and Rangers. My aunt is the one that got me into baseball.
Really?
Yeah. She got my mom got me to love football. My aunt got me to love baseball. She just take me to Mets games when we used to live in New York. But yeah, I've been there. That's a beautiful stadium too. Even just walking through that little walkway there in between, was it Utah Street? I think it is.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Baltimore is an awesome city.
It is. I've only been to probably 7 or 8 MLB stadiums. I'd love to get to more. I'd say that one probably ranks second behind PNC Park in Pittsburgh. That one is my favorite by far.
Kaufman Field is pretty
really
cool too.
The Royals?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always wanted to see a game there with the waterfalls.
Exactly.
Target Field in Minnesota is another good one too.
I've been there. That was pretty cool, man. Yeah, it's we could do
this forever. Yeah, there's so many great ballparks out there, but yeah, Army Navy. I think it is in Washington this year, so that's going to be a good one on Saturday. We talked about the Heisman ceremony this weekend too. Believe it's going to be Travis Hunter, although Ashton Genty just won the Maxwell Award, which is given to the most outstanding player in college football. I don't know why there's 2 of them, but 8 of the last 10 who have won that award have ended up winning the Heisman. So
we'll see.
Maybe we'll get an upset. It's very rare that you go into the Heisman ceremony and don't really know who's going to win it.
I covered one of those. You know who won it that year?
No.
Derrick Henry.
Really?
Yeah. I showed him pictures of that, and he was like, wow, man, you've been in this thing for a while. So, yeah, man, you know what I mean?
That who else was up for that one?
Christian McCaffrey and Deshaun Watson.
Right. Yes, that one was a good one. I want to say Kyler Murray's one wasn't 100% decided yet.
Yeah,
too.
That one wasn't.
But most of the time, you kind of know who it's going to be. Odds are it's going to be Travis Hunter, but who knows? It could end up being Ashton Genty. That's probably the highlight of tomorrow. Also, right here on the game, Preds are back in action, taking on Colorado. 7 p.m. pregame, 8 p.m. puck drop from Denver with Max Hers and Hal Gill. So that one should be good. And then the Cricket Celebration Bowl at 11 a.m. right after Force Company, Jackson State and South Carolina State. I will do a quick shameless plug here. 2 o'clock tomorrow, 94.9 The Fan. Vanderbilt women's basketball back in action, taking on Evansville. If you haven't been out to a game to see the Vandy women's team play, Michaela Blake's possible National Freshman of the Year. She's averaging 20 points per game. Former McDonald's All-American. And Camille Pierre, the starting power forward for the team, is the only player in women's college basketball averaging 20 points and 10 rebounds per game. So 9-1, top 10 in the net. It's a good time. So get out there to Memorial. Vandy playing Evansville tomorrow. And I'll be on the call over on 94.9 The Fan. TD, it's been fun.
Absolutely.
Been a good couple days. I think we're back in action on Tuesday.
I'm going to do my Marcus Peters. We ain't done yet.
Yeah, we ain't done yet. Yes. I think Jared will be back on Monday. I think that is the plan.
That is the plan.
Yes, the plan is Jared will be back Monday. We will be back on Tuesday from 2 to 6. And then, of course, Jake and TD every Friday from 6 to 7. Speaking of which, that's coming up next. If you missed an earlier part of the show, you can listen to it now. We will be back on the air in just a couple of seconds. For Teron Davenport, Ian Safar, I'm Jake Lyman signing off. Have a great weekend, Nashville. We'll talk to you next week here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.